National Guard veteran. Dana Ferguson of Minnesota Public Radio has more.
The second-term Democratic governor is a former high school geography teacher and National Guard veteran. He also served southern Minnesota in Congress before he ran for governor. Tim Walz, along with the Democratic majority legislature, passed laws in 2023 to protect access to abortion and gender-affirming care, fund free school meals, legalize marijuana, and cement workers' rights. The governor's supporters say having Walz on the ticket could help pick up support in Midwestern swing states. But the 60-year-old could also face questions about his response to riots following George Floyd's murder at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. For NPR News, I'm Dana Ferguson in St. Paul.
Tropical storm Debbie is creating a massive flooding problem in the southeast. The storm could pour up to 30 inches of rain on some parts of Georgia and South Carolina. Louisiana's Attorney General has asked a federal judge to throw out a lawsuit challenging a new state law. It requires the Ten Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. From member station WWNO, Matt Bloom has more.
Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill says a lawsuit brought by 9 multi-faith families against the rule is, quote, premature, since schools haven't posted the 10 Commandments yet. At a press conference, Murrill said there are countless ways to showcase the commandments, and one legal challenge can't target them all.
The plaintiffs have to show that every application of this law is unconstitutional. They cannot meet that burden.
The law requires that schools post the religious text by the start of next year. For NPR News, I'm Matt Bloom in New Orleans.
Police have melted away from the streets of the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka. Dozens of people were killed overnight, including officers, in apparent revenge attacks and rioting. The violence comes after the former prime minister fled the country yesterday. NPR's Dia Hadid has more from New Delhi.
Police officers are nowhere to be seen after they were attacked by angry protesters. Students who led the movement to overthrow the former Prime Minister directed traffic at some intersections. The police were at the forefront of the violent attempts to crack down on students during weeks of protests, in which hundreds of people were killed. That led the former Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, to flee the country. The army announced it would form an interim government. Parliament was also dissolved. Students told local media they hoped the Bangladeshi Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus will lead an interim government. The country's largest opposition party is also jostling for power. Tia Hadid, NPR News, New Delhi.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up nearly 500 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Congresswoman Lori Trahan is 100% behind Kamala Harris's pick for vice president. Trahan issued a statement shortly after Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was announced as Harris's pick. She writes, as a veteran, Tim Walz helped lead the Veterans Affairs Committee's work to improve health care and benefits for his fellow veterans. As an educator and governor, he passed free meals to make sure children don't go hungry. He passed gun safety laws and paid leave for workers. Lori Trahan says that we have a strong, proven ticket with Harris and Walz. Senator Elizabeth Warren will visit Fall River today to talk student debt cancellation. She'll address a student debt clinic. It's being hosted by the American Federation of Teachers and the Student Borrower Protection Center. Last week, the Biden administration notified borrowers of a student loan forgiveness plan expected to launch this coming fall. And air conditioning is headed to the Bristol County Jail. Sheriff Paul Hero says courts have ruled that excessive heat can violate the Eighth Amendment. It protects against cruel and unusual punishment. Cooling things off in the North Dartmouth jail is a safety issue. Hero tells the Standard Times assault happens more frequently when it's hot. The Ash Street Jail in New Bedford will not get AC. The sheriff is pushing to shut down what he calls a money pit in that facility. Rain and today and tomorrow, high in the 70s. It's 66 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include C3 AI. C3 Generative AI works to enable rapid access to traceable, hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems, helping turn the invisible into the obvious. This is Enterprise AI.
Here's your
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Yegan. This is Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you very much. We are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Thursday, we're going to be joined by Senator Elizabeth Warren. She won't be with us here at the library, unfortunately, but she will be with us in Studio 3 on Thursday.
Hi, Marjorie.
Hello,
how are you?
Jim. Very well, thanks.
By the way, later in the show, we're going to talk to CNN's John King about Kamala Harris's selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her VP running mate. We'll also open the lines at the end of the show and get your thoughts. But first, we're joined by Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She's with us for the entire first hour of the show, taking our questions and yours for the August edition of Ask the Mayor. If you'd like to ask the mayor a question, you can call or text her at 877-301-8970. Or if you're here, find our colleagues Hannah and Ariana right over there and tell them what you want to ask, and there's a decent chance you'll get to ask it. Mayor Wu, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a full house today. It's great to see everyone.
Yeah, it is nice to see everybody. So, Mayor Wu, I hadn't heard of Tim Walz until a couple of days ago. He's the vice presidential pick now, described as a progressive populist folk hero out in Minnesota, former football coach, he was National Guard for many years. He coined the weird dudes phrase, talking about the Republicans, J.D. Vance and the former president. So what do you think?
I am super excited. I mean, it seemed just from following the news that there were lots of great choices, lots of leaders with experience, and obviously it was going to come down to whomever the vice president had the most personal gut chemistry and alignment with, and I am very excited, I know, along with many others, about this choice, because here we have someone who, although I have not had the chance to interact with him personally, just from understanding his background, seeing how some of the social media clips of him have really caught fire across a wide swath of Democrats and people following the issues across the country. He brings the experience of having served on the executive side as a governor, really seeing how things are on the ground, having been in Congress for a significant amount of time, being a classroom teacher. I think it's the perfect combination.
By the way, this morning, our favorite satirist, Andy Borowitz's headline was, "Trump claims Walz was never white before," which I think is pretty good. We're talking to Mayor Wu. This morning, you did one of those commute with me things, which I love the concept. Explain what it is and explain who joined you this morning, Mayor.
So I had to cut the thing that was on my calendar right before this because the commute ended up going half an hour later than we had planned which is even more than expected. But I've been trying to really understand how the MBTA is doing and how the daily lives of our incredible residents across the city are impacted by the functioning of our transit system. So every once in a while, I will meet one of our residents wherever they're starting their day from and commute with them by the T to wherever they're ending up. So today I was with Toshuku, who is an incredibly inspirational recent BPS high school grad, just graduated from the O'Brien. He is headed off to Yale next week and finishing up his internship at Dana-Farber, where he's in the oncology department.
Wow.
So underachiever, clearly.
Wow.
He is amazing, but he commutes in from Hyde Park to Dana-Farber every day. And so we took a bus to the Orange Line, and then there was another split-second decision when you get off the Orange Line of whether the wait time of the next bus is worth it. It was not worth it, so we hustled the last 11 or so minutes with my pregnant belly trying to run down Longwood Ave to get him to his internship. And I just am, most of all, I'm grateful to have learned more about his story, how he took advantage of all the opportunities, interning at Mass General, at Dana-Farber, at all of these, really seeking the opportunities that we try to make available in the Boston public school system. So to see a young person who has taken full advantage of that and now is opening up the whole world ahead of him, headed off to college, is really inspiring. We hit new records with the paid youth summer jobs program now. We'll be at almost 11,500 students. And so to get the story of just how this program has changed one person's life is very, very fulfilling.
Our number's 877-301-8970. When you have an experience like that, do you call Phil Lang on the phone or somebody, one of your staff people call the T and say this is not a good morning?
So we actually will, I try to if my phone battery allows, document the entire trip, and then we keep our internal list of all of the different things that are pointed out, whether it's a sign that wasn't working, something that needs to be fixed, a sidewalk that is just not up to conditions, and then figure out which issues are city issues versus which issues are state issues. We will end up communicating that over, and then we end up editing the video down and then posting it for everyone.
Again, the number is 877-301-8970.
Mary, as long as you mentioned your pregnant belly running down the street this morning, I mentioned you before we went on the air, you're having your third kid. I said that when I had my third kid, I couldn't wait to get out of the house. Been there, done that. Okay, let's get out, let somebody else help. And you got the father of the children, what better person to be there helping. But you've taken a little flack from some quarters, Shirley Lang, not really flack, I shouldn't say, but you questioned, is it saying to other women you don't need a maternity leave? So how do you address those
No,
issues?
I mean, by all means, I am probably the most fervent believer that every single working parent or guardian in this country should have access to paid parental leave. We are one of the now very, very few remaining countries in the entire world that doesn't provide for that as just a guaranteed way to help a new family bond. And I've been really proud of the work we've done, starting from when I was pregnant on the city council the first time, with ensuring that city workers have access to paid parental leave, with the ordinances that I authored and have revised and expanded, with the contracts that we have settled that delivered paid leave for the first time ever, if you can believe, to our teachers, police officers, et cetera. There have been little ways that we have been able to expand the opportunities and access for working parents, such as providing childcare for the first time at the police academy, so that new recruits who are parents can also be able to take advantage of that opportunity. But my job is a little bit different, and I think everyone has to make their own decision. In my role, there is no such thing as delegating the job and just taking off weeks at a time. Even when I'm on vacation, technically with my family or out of the city, I am on call 24/7. And when a decision needs to be made, I make it. And certainly I will adjust how I do the job. I won't be on my feet as much. I'll probably be working from home a little bit more, but I'll be in touch with my team. And having done this 2 times before in this kind of a role, we are going to make every preparation and, of course, see how it goes and see what my doctor says and how the family's feeling.
What if you were to take a maternity leave, who would be the, I don't know, acting, interim, I don't know what the proper adjective is, who would run the city if you took a leave?
It's not defined in the city charter. Technically, anytime I am physically out of the city, it's written that the city council president steps in as acting mayor. But we've had precedents in the past where, for example, when Mayor Menino had surgery and was in the hospital for 6 weeks, he remained mayor throughout that whole time and really probably delegated more and worked with his team to be still, physically present in the city, although working in a slightly different way.
I don't want to. I'm worried I'm going to get in trouble here, so I'll be careful. Why are you not taking a maternity leave?
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this particular job is one that is it's just not a standard. I don't have HR defined vacation time. I don't have, as many of our elected officials do. We are here to serve for the tenure that residents give us, and it is a job where you can't really define the times when you're on, the times when you're off. Everything is at the sort of will of what needs to be done and decided in the city. So I will certainly be adjusting how I do the job, and working with the team to delegate whatever can be delegated and to make sure that physically we're making adjustments and all of that. But it's not a job where I can go away for 6 weeks or 12 weeks and hope that's how everything will be okay.
Are you jealous that the legislature's on a 5-month vacation? You can't take a speaking of the legislature, we're going to get to that later, and then we'll get to your calls and questions and those questions from the floor here at the library. We've had this discussion a lot of times about the notion that a democratically elected mayor, overwhelmingly elected mayor, you, city council, likes something, and a rep from Fitchburg can say no, and it doesn't happen. The classification plan of the property tax that you wanted didn't happen. Rent control, as we know, rent stabilization didn't happen. these liquor licenses incredibly didn't happen. The transfer fee on expensive property that both you and the governor were advocating for didn't happen. Something about the BPDA. What's your reaction to the to what Beacon Hill decided to say to the people of Boston and you, Mayor Wu?
I am still very disappointed that we are in this place, but I recognize that there were many important issues, some of which had pretty clear consensus, that did not have the opportunity to move forward. Some of them much more widely applicable statewide to everyone, such as the Economic Development Bill. And so now the legislature, it seems, has come out alongside the governor and said they will take the extraordinary and unusual step of reconvening to get some more things done rather than just waiting until January. I truly hope that some of these provisions can also be included in that, and we will do whatever it takes to make ourselves available at the city level, to share information, to advocate, to work with the Senate in particular, because several of our items were voted through overwhelmingly on the House side and then didn't make it through that final later step as their processes flow. Again, my sense is that we were in line following a number of high priority things, and they did not make it down the list all the way. It's just, when it comes to things that matter to the city of Boston, this residential tax relief proposal, I'm not sure there's something that could be more far-reaching than the impact that this would have if it doesn't go through. Every single resident, every homeowner, every renter that will experience the impacts of taxes passed on through their leases will most likely see a very significant tax increase and therefore the jump in their housing costs if this does not go through. And we have a proposal that would protect residents while still having businesses pay less in taxes. So there's a little bit of misinformation about how we're shifting it and therefore having a spike on businesses. That is not true. Business taxes will still go down while residential taxes are moderated. The businesses just won't be getting the massive tax break that I think some special interests are hoping for. And we also worked and really reacted to and responded to feedback that we got at the city and the state level to adjust the proposal so that at the end of the day, there's now an updated, revised compromise on the table that is much clearer about the degree, the scope, the duration of this, as well as the protection mechanisms for small businesses.
You know, with all due respect, you used the word disappointed, and I saw that quote somewhere in the paper too. Aren't you more than disappointed? They had 19 months. Well, not everything was filed 19 months ago. They had a hell of a lot of time, not to mention the fact they didn't need the governor to say reconvene. They could have reconvened on their own. They could have voted to extend the session to accommodate what you deem to be critically important to Boston. I mean, we're outraged, and we're not the mayor of Boston.
I am holding out every hope for this extraordinary step of reconvening. If this does not happen, every single resident in the city of Boston will know that their taxes are going up because the Senate did not vote through that last step, that there was a proposal on the table that was balanced, proven to have worked because it was used in the past, very reasonable, and again, protects residents and protects small businesses in this. And so we're going to stick with it. And, we had filed this in April with the city council, had multiple public hearings, had held briefings with the legislature along the way as well. It ended up getting passed in the first week of June by the city council, then was filed up at the State House, had a hearing later that month, or maybe I can't remember if it was late June or July that the hearing took place. And so we've been working at this and trying our best to stretch out the time and make sure it wasn't a last minute crunch, but you kind of run into, I can't control what they're working on statewide and how that all fits together.
One last thing. We've talked a lot about this home rule deal that is it's the law basically right now that projects that affect Boston by itself or any other city have to go through the legislature. So is there any possibility or way of ending that, or do you talk about that with your aides? Because it's ridiculous. Why should they decide whether Boston can get a liquor license or change their taxes or anything else?
Yeah, I think the the structure of lots of what we see around here, is part of the two-sided coin of what it means to be such a historic city and region. We have so much tradition, and we have so much that is a legacy built up over centuries. And then we have the leftover of prejudices that carried over into why formerly Irish-run Boston did not have the control relative to Brahmin, Protestant Beacon Hill at the time. And that is still embedded in our system today. And it still leads to huge, real, active disparities today, where the liquor license system is one of the most significant pieces holding back our economic recovery, right? To have certain neighborhoods effectively denied the ability to have more sit-down restaurants because they're all subject to a government monopoly that is held at an artificial scarcity level. It means that you have to have extraordinary resources just to even get in the game, versus other places where any chef or entrepreneur with an idea can get started. Sure, they have to worry about rent and all these other costs, but to have liquor license be $500,000, $600,000 just to get started, and just to trade that around the city, it has really deepened the barriers that entrepreneurs have to go through. And so there was a vote that happened I think between the Joint Conference Committee, where they agreed on the final shape of that. But I don't know all the ins and outs of State House procedure. They didn't make it through the final step. So that one, fingers crossed, has momentum, but it would be great if we didn't have to do that
and
every couple years.
They're largely in African-American neighborhoods, too. They're largely
or lower income
Mattapan and Roxbury and Dorchester, where people can't get the businesses going.
Undemocratic and irresponsible. Mary Ann is at the mic at the Boston Public Library with a question for the mayor. Hello, Mary Ann. Welcome.
Good morning.
Hi.
Congratulations, Mayor Wu.
Thank you.
So I am Mary Ann, and I work at the Museum of Fine Arts. So I want to thank you and your team for creating BPS Sundays, which will end this coming Sunday because of the pilot program. So my question to you is, first I wanted to let you know that I am very impressed with the number of families that are coming to the museum when they have other options too. But they are families, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles coming with the children. So I'm very impressed. I'm concerned now that it ends this Sunday. And my question is, what is the plan going forward, if you have a plan?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, because the MFA really was one of the leading organizations that made it possible for us to put this first ever collaboration together. I think the key to the successes that you've seen and that we've heard from families so far has been, one, having such a broad grouping of treasured institutions so that families know this is a real citywide program, and two, having the dependability that it is always these particular days. You don't have to worry about bringing a ticket or going to this place to pick up this form or that. You just show up and give them your BPS email and are able to go through. And so anyway, we are still in negotiations, I'll say, with your institution and the collective, because we know that the MFA and every cultural institution you have to keep the lights on with funding that comes from ticket prices. And so there's a little bit of a balance where we want to expand the program to as many of our young people and their families as possible, but museums are also telling us that the revenue they depend on that comes from memberships, they want to strike the right balance so that the expansion does not end up basically taking away all of the membership revenue and then leaving them in a place where they can't afford to keep operations going. So we very much are hoping to extend the current pilot as it is while we hopefully finish some of these negotiations, and then think about how we can add even more young people to the program. There might be different recognition of how a family's situation is, or the type of school that they're coming from. I hate to have any differentiation between any of our young people, but it's a very real issue about the finances of these institutions and how they really believe that it's not feasible to just sort of throw the doors open to everyone and maintain their budgets.
Mary Ann, thank you very much for the call. Do you want to
go to Sean in West Roxbury? Thank you for calling, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Oh, he just disappeared.
Let's do Tom in Roslindale.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Tom, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name's Tom. I'm calling to ask Mayor Wu, how do I stop the echo here?
We're fine on our end. I know it's difficult for you, but we hear you perfectly. So if you can bear with it, Tom, just get your question out and we'll have the mayor respond, please.
I'll do my best.
Thanks.
I'll do my best.
Thanks.
I'm calling about the Squares and Streets initiative, particularly the community planning process that the planning department has undertaken. Roslindale was the first of the 16 Squares and Streets districts. And my sense and the sense of many of my neighbors is that they're still learning, the planning department is still learning how to inform the communities. And I'm worried about several things in Roslindale, the height of buildings, particularly the displacement of residents and small businesses.
Tom, what's your question for the mayor, if you don't mind? What's your question?
So, okay, thank you.
Sure.
So the question is, doesn't it make sense to give Roslindale some extended time to really understand what's a huge project that most people still don't know about in the community?
We got it. Tom, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Mayor Wu?
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you for participating in it and helping us sort through how both what the outcome should be for a particular neighborhood, but also how the process should run. You are absolutely right that in these first two neighborhoods, Roslindale and Hyde Park, part of the learning and part of what we've tried to say up front is that we want to make sure we are not just understanding the vision of the neighborhood, but on sort of how the built environment should shape up, but also how we can best engage with neighbors. And so we've really been using different methods and different types of outreach. We've been doing small business drop-ins and supplementing with all different kinds of tabling at neighborhood events and trying to reach people who may not be the typical meeting goers on the email lists or on the notification lists of standard city meetings. And so that's been a big priority and focus. I think here the goal is to balance being able to focus on a targeted area so that we can move more quickly than doing a whole neighborhood-wide plan, which usually takes multiple years and is basically out of date by the time it's done, with allowing everyone to have an opportunity to be in that outreach and help spread the word. So we definitely are going to need your help to continue understanding who else we need to be bringing into this. I will check in with the team because I know there was always a little bit of flexibility built in on the timelines to make sure we get this right versus just get it done. And I will follow up to see what the latest is on that front.
Tom, thank you very much. Kearney Hospital, we've heard your comments saying that you will actively oppose any attempt to rezone the property away from providing health care. There's a report, my understanding until this morning was that according to Steward Healthcare, and I think it shows a little naivete on my part to just believe everything they say, there were no viable bidders for two of the hospitals, including Kearney. There was a report on BUR this morning that a company that operates hospitals in Michigan, Illinois, and New Jersey made a bid for all 8 hospitals, and it was not considered viable. One, do you know about this? And what's your reaction to hearing somebody say, we did try to buy this place? Keep it open.
Yeah, I have not seen the bids myself, and I think at some point, after different processes are going to be wrapped up, there's probably more opportunity for full transparency on this. But what I understand from the state is that there were kind of what seemed like nominal bids put in. I don't know if it's just the amount written as $1 or something like that, that did not signal a serious assessment of what the financial value would be and all of that. It sounds like from reading the media coverage that it was intended to just be a foot in the door to start negotiations and kind of start from the lowest possible bargaining point. But that was not deemed to be a qualified bid because the other ones came with real numbers and real plans attached to them.
Have you given up on keeping this open? I know there's a concern the governor has and others that it not be August 31st like the judge determined, but 120 days. Beyond the 120 days, have you given up on that possibility that it stays open in some capacity?
If you look at the map of where healthcare access exists across the city, that is a key location for that whole part of Dorchester and of Boston. And when we talk to residents, they, and some of our partners have reported back to us, whether it's the doctors and nurses and healthcare workers on site or others who are part of the community board and in the community, saying that when patients are currently asked, what are you going to do if this closes? Everyone says, I'm going to be BMC. Milton has a hospital that's pretty close, but it's just, we could do some more education potentially, but right now, the feeling is that if this closes and there is no healthcare on site for the foreseeable future, some of our other local hospitals are going to be overwhelmed with just a surge in demand and need. The challenge here is that even if we find a grouping of, let's say, local community health centers or another entity who's willing to provide on-site healthcare, the lease, the real estate transactions there are so out of whack. It's more than $2 million a month just to satisfy the current leaseholder with this MPT, Medical Properties Trust.
And this was Steward's doing, to sell it and lease it back.
And to create this complicated financial structure where everyone is intertwined and probably has some more self-dealing involved in it. So I think there are separate questions. One is, how do we make sure there's healthcare access with every possible resource and tool on the table? We are already starting to work very closely on that and convening meetings with all those in the area to plan for every situation. And then it's how to break this knot of the unrealistic and wildly predatory real estate situation that exists on there. And if that landlord could be persuaded to exit or renegotiate, I think that opens up a lot more possibilities, because there are local providers, as I understand, who are interested, especially in maintaining acute care.
Someone having that
site.
conversation with them, either you or the governor, or somebody having that conversation?
I believe that those conversations are one of the primary focus areas of the state and the governor.
Can we do an upbeat thing before we take a break?
Oh yeah, tell us about this open streets thing going.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I have swag
Hyde Park
for you
is.
both.
That's even better. Thank you.
So these are the volunteer shirts for those who will be staffing our open streets events. We have expanded it year by year, and so this year Hyde Park is having its first ever open streets event that will happen this weekend. Okay, I'm looking to make sure I get the dates right for the other ones. I think East Boston is next. Okay.
The mayor's checking her phone for those who are not watching the streaming here at the library. She can tell us how many days she has left in her term while she's looking at her phone.
5/12.
5/12.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
I love that.
This Sunday is the first ever Hyde Park Open Streets, 10:30 to 5. The remaining dates are East Boston on September 15th and Alston Brighton on October 20th. And so just as a reminder, the concept is that these are major thoroughfares in the community. They get closed down to vehicular traffic. You see small businesses setting up tables in the street, music, performances, kids riding bikes, everyone walking around, and it really feels like a neighborhood festival. And so we rotate them around the city so that everyone can experience each neighborhood as well.
Speaking of 512, before we do take a break, you said when you spoke to the Globe about your pregnancy that you were running for re-election. You just haven't decided when you'll formally announce. So you are running for a second term.
I plan to run. I've tried to be clear about the fact that we have a lot of work left to do, and this is just the greatest gift to be able to do this job alongside the people that I work with and the residents of the city. I think in terms of launching an official campaign, I will wait and make the announcement when the time is right.
Our number is 877-301-8970 if you'd like to call or text and speak with Mayor Michelle Wu, who'll be with us to the top of the hour. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Quick break. We'll be right back with more of the mayor.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Jermaine Jenkins has been fighting to bring healthy food to her community for years. She's done it by turning a vacant city lot into a thriving urban farm. Her fight for food justice is the focus of the new documentary, Rooted. She joins us ahead of her event at Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. Then New York Times bestselling author J. Courtney Sullivan on her new novel. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Eversource, committed to helping businesses reach sustainability goals and lower their energy use through energy assessments and custom recommendations. Learn more at eversource.com. And Boston Children's Museum. This summer you can dive into curiosity and play, create, and wonder. From Winnie the Pooh to the Outdoor Curiosity Kitchen, family fun and learning happen every day. BostonChildren'sMuseum.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Liz Cheney, Andrew Lloyd Webber, news anchor Chris Wallace, and artificial intelligence entrepreneur Oren Etzioni. BostonSpeakers.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Sport climbing made its Olympic debut at the 2020 Summer Games. This year in Paris, Team Japan is expected to dominate.
They're incredibly talented at coordination, at power, at all the things that make a climber really amazing.
The evolution of one of the newest Olympic events and the climbers to watch. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online, youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow, Thursday in Brighton. Senator Warren will join us, and right now we're speaking to Mayor Wu for her monthly Ask the Mayor. Our number is 877-301-8970.
Kim in the car, you are on with Mayor Wu. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Great. I wanted to call on behalf of being a parent to a special needs child and the MCAS requirement that is currently up for, I think, on the ballot.
It is.
Yep.
And my question to you would be, giving the perspective that I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, and I have twins, so one just graduated. My daughter is 18 and she's a junior. She will likely not pass the MCAS. And she's been going to school year-round since she was 3. So she has autism, she has mental health issues, and epilepsy. So she's not the only one. My question is, how can we, in the Commonwealth, celebrate the diversity that MCAS does not offer to our neurodivergent students and her getting a diploma? And can you help me with the governor on this one?
Kim, thanks.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing your family story and for making sure that you are advocating not just for your own child, but for many, many families who are experiencing systems that often don't work. I know it's been a big focus within the Boston Public Schools to try to put the resources in the right places and work with our educators to overhaul how we think about serving students with disabilities and special education needs. And I hope we are making some progress there, although there's a lot of work to do. I think on this front, I hear from our teachers and school leaders all the time that there's always, for every policy that gets put in place, there are some additional consequences when you're the ones implementing them, or there are groups of students or people who aren't kind of seen directly. For high-stakes testing to determine the fate of a school or a particular student can be quite harmful in a lot of ways. And at the same time, I think I hear from educators as well, you can hold that position and also believe that we need some clear standards, we need our degrees to mean something, we need consistency across the board. And so there's this, I think My understanding of some of the hesitation is that if there were a clear alternative proposed, that would be one thing, but there's a little bit of more of a gray area when the alternative proposed is to set up a task force and then wait and see what happens and try to have that work out. So I agree with you that we need a system that takes into account all of the individual needs of our young people, and that we do have to have, at the same time, we do have to have some sense of coherency and consistency across the board in what those standards are. So it's an incredibly complicated topic that we're trying to work through in Boston. We, in many places, have moved away from the MCAS as the be-all, end-all, precisely because of the issues that you're raising, but are still having to, understand that districts around the Commonwealth might not have as many resources to be doing the same thing.
So you're voting no. Kim, thank you for your call. You're voting no on the question of eliminating it as a graduation requirement.
I have not yet sat down all the way and made sure to feel as deeply educated on the particular consequences of the ballot language yet. So that is something that is on my list to make sure that I do very soon. I do have some discomfort with the idea of the be-all, end-all being one particular test that, as you heard, doesn't serve everyone, but that also there's a need for making sure that there are standards in place that continue to hold all of us accountable for the delivery of education to our young people.
Could you tell us about this e-bike incentive program? And when you're telling us about it, tell us whether e-bike riders are allowed to ride in bike lanes.
Yes, e-bike riders are highly encouraged to ride in bike lanes. And again, I'm going to pull out the specific dollar amounts and all of this. The idea is that, we see more and more, the data shows that more and more people are getting on bikes, leaving cars behind, and we're making it more possible for people to choose to use a bike lane when there's more safe infrastructure. I know it is stressful to see the changes to streets that everyone is very familiar with, and to understand the impacts of how we continue to need to move more people as population goes up or as jobs come here, while traffic can get more complicated with the changing patterns of delivery, food delivery, and scooters and all of this. So this is in fact a way that we can expand how many more people are able to choose to leave behind cars, because e-bikes just give you that extra power boost, and it makes it so that if you're having a particularly long commute, or if there's an uphill or series of difficult spots, you really are moving with more than just your own physical power. So yesterday we opened applications for the incentive program. This means that there will be 1,000 vouchers available, ranging from $800 to $2,400, to help reduce the costs of individuals who are purchasing an e-bike. And there will also be $150 to purchase bicycle safety equipment when you are selected for that program. You have to be 18 years old or older, and you have to fit at least one of the criteria of being income eligible, a senior over 60 years of age, or an adult with a chronic or permanent disability. And so this is really to make sure that we are incorporating inclusion in who can be part of our cycling community.
Chris in Boston. I'm sorry, Margaret.
Oh, no, go ahead. Chris in Boston.
Hi there. Chris.
Hi, how are you today?
Excellent.
Long-time listener, called many times.
You're very kind.
I do want to start by saying I love the energy you brought to the artist community. I've been a working performing artist in Boston for...
Hey, Chris, we're going to put you on hold. You have a rotten connection. Do not go away. We'll take one other question, and then we'll go right back to you and hope that you're in a better location. So please stick around, Chris, if you will. 877-301-8970.
Let's go to Brian in Brighton. Thank you for calling, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, great. I've been a businessman in Boston for about 49 years. And my family is in all different neighborhoods of Boston. Instead of first looking to raise the taxes on residents of Boston, why don't they look like businessmen do to cutting programs or cutting and finding savings? I'd like to mention three off the top of my head.
Sure.
You have a full firebox program around the city Nobody uses those fireboxes anymore. Most people don't even know where they are, and cell phones have made them antiquated. We should cut that program and reassign those electricians to other parts of the city to do work. We have surplus property in the billions of dollars. Why doesn't the city have an auction and auction off all the surplus properties? I've seen some of the properties on the tax rolls. They've been carrying them for like 40 years.
What's the third thing, Brian?
It's schools. And the third thing is the local schools. Can we get together with MIT and come up with a program that they can measure the distance of all the pupils from the schools and make more local schools so the kids don't have to do busing? We're spending a fortune on the buses and on the bus parking at night, as well as the bus drivers.
We got it, Brian. Let's hear what the mayor has to say about
That's quite a
cutting
thorough
spending.
investigation, Brian. Thank you.
Hey, Brian. Mayor Wu, go.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for following the issue so closely and having clear proposals and suggestions to it. That's always I really appreciate when people are really trying to advance the conversation and getting into it too. So I want to just be clear. I think as you mentioned, and as I referenced earlier, the proposal that we have on the table at the State House, really sort of remaining before the State Senate, is not to raise taxes on businesses. Businesses will pay less in taxes even with the proposal that we have. It's just to make it so that it's more balanced between residents and the commercial property sector. And so it's a quirk of state tax law. It's not something that we have the ability to tweak as we like or really to move flexibly. State law under Prop 2.5 requires that the municipalities collect 2.5% increase year over year, which is less than inflation. And so as we manage the city budget, we really have to stay within the bounds of that 2.5% plus whatever new growth comes and other revenue sources. And every single year also, cities are required by law to have a balanced budget. And so we do not spend or plan for spending any money that we don't have. And we are not looking for this tax proposal because we wildly inflated our budget and now don't have a way to pay for it and so need to scoop it up from other places. Again, it's just a quirk of how the state law is organized, that we have a situation where if property values for residents and commercial properties go up at the same time, everything stays in balance. If they go down at the same time because of the economy, everything stays in balance. But when one goes up and one goes down, then it gets thrown out of whack because of the particular ratios that are also rigidly prescribed in law. So we're looking to tweak the ratio by a few percentage points to be able to ease and balance that transition. We are always looking to make sure that we try to save wherever possible and make the most use of taxpayer dollars. I think the Firebox program is something certainly that there's been analysis for. We have seen this raised in the past, and not that this should justify every situation, but I will say that when the 911 system suddenly went down statewide, this was something that was relied on and that we were encouraging people to reach out to. Although, again, we try to look at and make sure that there's every way with the latest technology of more efficiently providing services. And the scale of what would come from this, I think, is, every dollar counts, but it's really not the main cost driver. And so it's something that definitely we should be looking at and talking with the fire department on, although they would say that it's a matter of basic public safety. But it's a relatively minor cost item. I think the schools is a big one. And here, this is a choice about who we are as a community. We put an additional $80 million of city funding into the Boston Public Schools this year because of the extraordinary need as federal dollars were disappearing. We have this habit, sort of established pattern with how we treat public education of just yo-yoing them back and forth. When there's a big need, where the school will get flooded with resources and then it goes away, and after they've established themselves and been really successful with tutoring and other programs and social emotional supports, then that funding disappears and we're back to this kind of roller coaster. And so we've really said that the most important thing for our future is developing the workforce and developing the talent and opportunities for our young people to step into these roles. And that means being willing to invest where it's needed on the supports on the academic curriculum expansion, on the steps that we are seeing really stabilize and improve the Boston Public Schools that are going to take some time to dig out from where we were, but that Superintendent Mary Skipper is doing a great job on. And so, again, we are already asking departments and schools to cut, to think how their positions are, to take on new programming only through finding savings in past budgets. This has been a very limited and disciplined budget. We have a AAA bond rating. We hold that very high in our priority list. We have wanted to continue to fully fund our pension and stay on schedule for that in order to maintain that discipline. But in all these areas, we have the revenue coming in before we spend anything. We make those projections, and then particularly in this case, there's been a number of 8% thrown around, which is actually quite misleading. It includes a whole chunk of shifting over the BPDA to the planning department with budget that used to be off the city books, now coming onto the city books, so it's actually not new spending at all. The change in our budget is very comparable to previous years based on increases in revenues as excise taxes and other sources of city revenues came back. Tourism taxes came back with the economy, so we feel very confident about where that revenue is going to come in from. But we just need to make sure that we are allocating that appropriately, and we'll continue to try to find places and ways to save and be efficient with our dollars.
Brian, thank you for your call. We appreciate it.
Mary, our colleague Liz Neishloss here at GBH wrote a story about people being trapped in Boston public housing elevators. She focused on the place in the South End called the Ruth Barkley Apartments, where people are on the 5th floor, the 9th floor. One woman's in a wheelchair. She has slid down the stairs a couple of times because the elevators don't work. The BHA says they don't have enough money, but frankly, I don't know how it's legal to put people in an apartment complex who are disabled where the elevators don't work.
By the way, she also says that 1/3 of them are either at the end of their useful life or near the end of their useful life.
Yeah. Yep. So one item, just on the last question, I forgot to mention for Brian calling in from Brighton. I actually wrote a whole long Substack post on the interaction between the city budget, where our revenue sources come from, and the tax proposal. So if you want more details, it's wutrain.substack.com. You can find it on there. I forgot to say that. So on the elevator issue, again, this is an example of how infrastructure can be such a hidden, invisible need that gets passed over because money gets pulled to more flashy announcements or more urgent crises. And then we have buildings that are way past their functional date. And whether it's the school buildings or the MBTA tracks or some of the facilities within Boston Housing Authority, this is a real challenge and a real need. The federal government has stopped funding public housing over the last 40 plus years. And so more and more of it is needing to come from city budgets or finding ways to be creative. This particular building, the Ruth Barkley, was built in 1950. The elevators are so old now that the original manufacturer is just gone, closed. And so to even find the replacement parts, you basically have to find them on the secondary market where they're still floating around. The cost of building an entirely new modernized elevator is anywhere between $1.5 and $5 million. And there are hundreds of elevators across the system. And the capital budget that comes in from a combination of federal support and the rent rolls and this and that there's $30 million total. So to make our way through it, we are trying to find extraordinary resources, but the priority has been fix what we can by trying to source these very, very old and now rare parts. With Ruth Barkley and with all of our buildings, at least one of the elevators now has been fixed up. And so although not all of the elevators are available, these buildings do have some access, and there's been priority given to residents who need to transfer to a different building with full elevator access or with ground floor access if they have mobility challenges and that doesn't work. So that's been incorporated into how the assignment and transfer process goes. But it's like the pools. We are just trying to dig out from decades of getting out from underneath deferred maintenance, and they're working really hard on this issue, and we are going to have to try to continue finding the dollars to do it.
Chris in Boston, we're going to hope your phone connection is good, and if it is, you got to be really brief. We're running low on time. Hi.
Sure. Okay, thanks. I've been working performance artists in Boston for the last 40 years. I'm a registered artist. I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and hard to say, but now I'm elderly. Rents are getting impossible for someone like me. And someone like me who's not better at the piano, excuse me, than I am at the internet. Every application for housing, you have to put in separately for each building. My question to you, is there one list I can get on? Or is there someone in City Hall that can help someone like me navigate the internet?
Chris, thank you. Don't go away. We have a minute, Mayor Wu.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. There is not one list right now, and that's been a point of debate whether we enroll everyone in every list or if the different location options are so different that people should go one by one. And so it's still currently on the one by one, very frustrating. But there is someone that can help you within City Hall. So if you stay on, we will get your contact information. We have artist housing that is coming online in different places. We have senior housing that's coming online in different places. So we will keep our fingers crossed and make sure that you are aware of all of the opportunities that are available.
Chris, stay on hold. We'll get your information and give it to the mayor. Mayor, we only have a minute left. We have the head of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts with us in a few minutes that is not fond of your ShotSpotter program in the city at all, saying it leads to over-policing in communities of color, low-income communities, doesn't solve crime like it says it does. Tomorrow we have former Commissioner Bill Bratton, the CEO of ShotSpotter, on the show with us. Do you see any merit in the arguments that are made by the Civil Liberties Union? And I'm sorry, we're short on time.
Yeah, I think any time that there's technology used and surveillance of any kind, you have to just be aware of what biases are built into that technology, whether it's in how it's deployed or how it's been programmed itself, right? Facial recognition, which we banned, and this in particular. When I served on the council, worked alongside the ACLU and other community organizations to write and pass the ordinance that now puts parameters and protections around any surveillance technology from the city. So this year we issued the first ever report in compliance with that ordinance that documents all the data privacy parameters, who can access this, knowing where these are. And so it's a balance, but we want to put public safety first, using the best technology while ensuring that everyone's on the same page about how to protect it.
Mayor Wu, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming in. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu joins us monthly. We're very grateful for her time. Coming up after the new news, media maven Sue O'Connell
is also progressive, and that's feeding into the GOP's campaign narrative that the Democrats are too liberal for the United States. Former President Donald Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, spoke to CNN a short time ago.
I actually called Tim Walz. I left a voicemail. I didn't get him. But I just said, look, congratulations. Look forward to a robust conversation and enjoy the ride. And maybe he'll call me back. Maybe he won't. Yeah.
And all that water has little place to go. Charleston's mayor is so concerned about flash flooding, he enacted a curfew last night, essentially closing the peninsula until officials can reassess the danger later. A tornado did touch down overnight in a beachside community just south of Charleston. State and local leaders are urging people to stay home. For NPR News, I'm Victoria Hansen in Charleston, South Carolina.
A rocket attack on a main U.S. base in Iraq yesterday wounded several military personnel. More from NPR's Jana Raff.
A Pentagon official said several persons.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey has released a statement on Kamala Harris's selection of Tim Walz as her running mate. Healey writes that she's thrilled with this selection and adds that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are the ideal team to defeat Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and move this country forward. She adds, if you want to see the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, just look at the quality and character of the person they chose as their running mate. She says she's proud. She's a proud colleague of Governor Walz. Meanwhile, Congressman Richard Neal also expressed strong support for Governor Tim Walz. Neal and Walz shared a close working relationship during their time together in the House of Representatives, as they have a shared vision for the future, which includes advocating for policies that benefit all Americans and their deep commitment to their respective communities. Rides on Southeastern Regional Transit Authority buses will cost you nothing through at least June of next year. New Bedford Light reports that the authority has been piloting the program for months. It was supposed to end this month, but the state budget provided enough funding for another year of free rides. And who doesn't like free? In sports, Red Sox Royals play Game 2 of their series tonight in Kansas City. It's day 12 of the Olympics in Paris. Sports Illustrated reports that Snoop Dogg is being paid $500,000 a day plus expenses to just be himself at the games. 67 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. We are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Senator Elizabeth Warren will be with us at 11 o'clock on Thursday. We want to make that announcement. And we have a little crusade that we're beginning now, Jim. We've had many crusades. We haven't gotten
all
far.
All of which have failed.
All of which have failed.
But this one may be different. What we decided to do, because we were so upset with the legislature going on their 5-month vacation with so much undone, that we every day at noon, we're going to list for you something that we think matters that they didn't care enough to do anything about. You know, we actually did this already with Mayor Wu when we listed 5 measures that she sponsored, not one of which saw the light of day. The one we want to just talk about for 30 seconds right now are these safe consumption sites, which ultimately passed the Senate in the last minute. But one would think that when virtually every politician correctly is concerned about the opioid crisis, and while the numbers are overall down in Massachusetts, they're up, particularly for men of color, that they would go out of their way to put this into the so-called toolbox of cities and towns, but they did not, Marjorie.
And it would allow, this wouldn't be a top-down kind of thing. It would allow local health boards and city councils to approve these programs if they thought that they could be helpful in their particular city and town. And once again, the legislature, who has a lot of time, certain members are there to hang around in cigar bars in the North End, drinking very expensive liquor and smoking cigars that can cost $85, didn't have time to get through their work that they should have done, and left many people, including people who are dealing with the opioid crisis, in the lurch.
So at noon every day, we'll take a minute and just highlight something that they chose not to deal with. Speaking of cigar bars, let's talk to our next guest, a favorite local woman, wildlife consultant, Sue O'Connell.
Good day.
She is the co-publisher, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
She's the co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, co-host with Corey Smith at NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. Now I will say hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day to
Hello,
you.
Sue
Good
O'Connell.
day.
Thank you
Good
very
day.
much.
Well,
Good
Sue
day.
O'Connell, you are a
Good
brilliant
day.
political observer
Thank you. Thank
and
you very much.
prognosticator.
I am indeed.
So,
I
what
was
do you-
completely wrong with the vice president.
So was I. I
Go
said it
right
was
ahead.
Kelly.
So
and
was
a wall.
I.
That's what I said.
I thought
That's what I
Kelly
said.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted an astronaut in the White House,
So did
and
I.
I wanted a twin, so maybe we could do some Freaky Friday stuff in like
Exactly.
in meetings.
I-
Like,
Those
nope,
are
that
good
wasn't me.
reasons,
That was
Yeah,
a twin.
I thought it was going to be Kelly too, but instead it is Waltz from Minnesota. What do you think?
Well, the gays love him.
The gays
I just
love
want to
him.
let you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
gays.
I just found out about him a couple of weeks ago, so
Yeah.
I'm an expert
Me
on
too.
him.
I'd
by
never
now,
heard of
I have
him.
to say, but all of my friends and colleagues, LGBTQ journalists in the Midwest and in Chicago, have loved him for a long time.
Why?
He's just America's dad, America's coach. When he was a teacher, you know, he's got a
J.D. Vance is an American dad, too. They don't love him, do they?
yeah,
Or do
but
they?
which American dad would you want to tell you were gay?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it, right? So when he was a
point.
teacher, he was not only the coach of the football team, but he was also the advisor to the LGBTQ
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
alliance
Yes.
as well. So folks are making the comparison that
didn't
if
know
you
that.
watch Modern Family, he is the straight Cam, right? He's the guy. And if you watch Modern Family, folks were also saying
Great
that this
show.
ticket is Gloria and Jay.
There you
with
go.
Kamala being Gloria and Walls being Jay.
I like
so
it.
he's a progressive. I interrupted Mayor Wu when you were on break to ask her thoughts on this. He strikes me also as a sort of Tom Menino type, where when you look at Tom Menino or when you met Tom Menino, when Menino became acting mayor when Ray Flynn left back in the early 90s, Bay Windows actually had the headline that said, most conservative member of the city council becomes acting president. Of course, that couldn't be further from the truth, right? So I think when you look at Walz, you think, Midwestern, he must be kind of conservative, and then you get to know him and you realize that he can represent progressive values in a way that I think white men and white suburban women, who I think were targeted most by the Harris campaign to find the right VP, can really hear what he's saying, and I think that it's a big win. I mean, again, didn't know who the heck he was until 3 weeks ago, but now I think it's a good choice.
So we were both wrong. Who did you think that Harris was going to pick?
I thought it was going to be Kelly.
And you did too?
Then I was hearing yesterday that Kelly was gone, obviously, so I figured it was going to be Shapiro. I didn't think it was going to be Walz, but what do I know?
Yeah, Walz also apparently is very charismatic. And the joke is to also just send him to football games for the next 2 months, because when you meet him, people say he is incredibly charismatic and likable. So I imagine he won Vice President Harris over that.
Okay, so let's talk about another guy who would be president, who has been fading of late, but I think his position on dead bears could rejuvenate the campaign. Here's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., talking, I think, to Roseanne Barr about why he who hasn't put a dead bear in Central Park with a bike on top of it?
Especially
he's explaining
a six-month-old bear cub.
Explaining why he did put a dead bear cub in Central Park after someone allegedly accidentally hit it with a car in upstate New York. Here's RFK Jr.
I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper, and I turned on the TV, and there was a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars.
By the way, the only reason he told the story is because the New Yorker was about to come out with an expose on a bunch of things. What's the funny part of this?
There's nothing funny about it. Okay, first of all, if you're in a room with Roseanne Barr and you're telling a story and she starts looking at you like you're the crazy one, you should probably shut up. I mean, if you watch this video, you see her. She's got a cup of tea or coffee, and as he's telling the story, she just kind of goes, all right, okay, that's fine. There's a number of problems with what RFK did here. First of all, it wasn't like he was 18 years old, and it wasn't like he was drunk or on drugs.
12 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2014.
2014.
Right?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Okay, so he's when he was 60. 60 years old, and he does this. Second of all, we can get upset about the entire aspect of it, that it cost the New York City Police Department money, that it inconvenienced people, that it scared people
about bears.
But I want to talk about his lack of executive function here, okay? First of all, you find, or he says, person hit the bear in front of him, and he decided to take the bear. He clearly lays out that he has a whole day planned. He's going falconing with his friends, and then they're going out to dinner, and then he's got to take a flight. So he just picks this dead cub bear up and puts it in his car? For how many hours?
He said he was allegedly going to skin it put the meat in his refrigerator.
Except it's going to be in his car for hours. So what kind of executive function do you have that you can't plan, that you're going to take this roadkill and keep it fresh for whatever you're going to do for it, and then at the end he's surprised that he has to take a flight and he's got a dead baby cub in the back of his car, and the next executive function that he has is, we'll drop it in a bike lane because I don't like bike lanes, and there won't be any impact of it. And then the next executive function failure is he surprised the media covered it. Is this someone you want to be president of the United States that can't plan ahead that, hey, I found a dead thing, what am I going to do with it?
When you look at him online, look up the dead bear pictures I just did before he went on, he's pretending that he was bitten by the bear. But right next to that is a picture of him supposedly biting into a dead dog.
Or a
goat. He said it was a goat.
It could be a goat.
Yeah.
But a dog expert said it was a dog.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously there's something very wrong with him. He was traumatized as a child. We know that. But it's just...
There's something off here.
There's something very off, and he could really impact this election in a very
He's very
upsetting
disappointed
way.
because he feels he's being out-offed by Donald Trump, which is a real issue.
Yes.
So we'll move on. So let's talk about, you were an expert on the Karen Reed trial. You were there virtually every single day. I cannot tell a lie. When I first heard the defense lawyers saying that members of the jury were calling to say that on 2 of the charges, most importantly, second-degree murder, we had reached a unanimous not guilty verdict. I was somewhat skeptical until the prosecutors, complying with their ethical obligation, told the court yesterday or the day before that they too had been contacted by members of the jury saying the exact same thing.
Correct.
There's a hearing on Friday. We've discussed it with a lot of lawyers, and I have to say, despite all the lawyering about a verdict's not a verdict until it's announced, I understand that. When you have a jury that had 3 charges before them, and on 2 of the charges, including the most serious one, they had reached unanimity of not guilty, and they never had an opportunity to express it. There's something wrong with this picture, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's our system. I mean, part of this is the way that we, I'm not a court expert. I'm not a legal expert. I was chosen by NBC 10. We had reporters who were covering the Karen Reed trial. I was chosen to just go and observe and kind of act like a juror or act like a regular person to understand how this case went. And Carol and you and Marjorie can talk more on an expert level than me, but our system is a mess, right? There's no mechanism to ask the jurors what the verdict was that they had. They were supposed to volunteer it. Well, how do they know they're supposed to volunteer it? I wouldn't know that I was supposed to volunteer it. And if I'm the defense or the prosecution, I understand why you wouldn't ask them, because you don't want information that's going to hurt your case to go forward. So they're giving like this archaic piece of paper in order to fill out the verdict, and then they are communicating in a very eloquent way with the judge, but not in a way that would give information about where they were on the first charge, which was murder, and the third charge, which was leaving the scene. So then they just go, and they have expressed also to, at least to the defense team, one of the jurors, that they were surprised how abruptly it all ended. So this is the system that we have here in Massachusetts that is now putting us in this mess. So what happens next on Friday? Judge Cannoni, Beverly Cannoni, will hear the arguments about whether or not to dismiss the first charge of murder moving forward, because the next court case...
Or to have a hearing, calling in some of the jurors.
Right. But they also won't do that because they don't want to interfere in what the juries do in the jurors' room. So is she going to set precedent by saying, yes, I'm going to dismiss the charge, and then it ends up at the Supreme Court?
I'm not a legal expert, even though I'm sort of a lawyer. I think it's very possible she decides to allow the defense to call some of these jurors as witnesses to see how final their unanimity was, and then make a decision. This is a big deal.
It is a big deal, but what's a bigger deal is that clearly the jury did not, despite the police officers disgracing themselves on the witness stand, the jury thought she hit him. I mean,
no, we don't know that because it's split. It's
9-3 or 8-4.
But the entire jury, if we believe what the filing said, if they believe she hit him, she would have found him guilty. They would have found her guilty of manslaughter.
I thought one of the jurors that called the prosecutor said they didn't even believe that she knew that she had hit him.
So they don't know if she hit him. They don't know if she hit him if she knew she hit him, and some of them don't think she hit him at all.
But my point is, it was divided. It was 9-3 or 8-4 in favor of manslaughter.
And that's a hung jury. That means not guilty.
Right, but I guess it would indicate to me that the majority believe that she hit him, as opposed to thinking that
in that trial
he was dragged into the house
in that trial. So if you get another trial, I mean, I wouldn't if I wouldn't bring murder charges again.
They might do manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter.
Well, I don't think that's clear, by the way, because that was my initial thought here. We should talk to Carol Rose is going to be here in a couple minutes. We'll bring it up with her too. But particularly for former prosecutors, it seems to me you have a better likelihood of getting an involuntary if there's a more serious charge that they decide not to move in the direction of. If the involuntary manslaughter is the most serious charge, then it's possible they'll find that one, the burden of proof was met. The bottom line is twofold. One, something is wrong here with the system. And number two, I hope if it turns out there's an acquittal in these serious charges, and ultimately there may be an acquittal, or they may choose not to try her, that Officer O'Keefe is not forgotten. I mean, he's dead for a reason. Somebody's responsible for this. And as we've discussed with you, he has taken a back seat in so much of this discussion because there's so much focus on Karen Reed, which I respect. but let's hope he's not forgotten.
But
in this process.
since you weren't on the able to get all the stuff that went on the side,
Yep.
I mean, it did seem to me that, I mean, I wasn't there either, but just from what you read, she probably didn't realize how badly he was hurt. She's called him multiple times.
Listen, the evidence that was presented in the courtroom, which was the only thing that I was focusing on, I did not look at any prior hearings, I didn't read any of the blogs, I didn't do any of the deep dives. I don't think that the Commonwealth met a whole number of minimum requirements to find her guilty on
Well, obviously the jury apparently didn't either. In any case, we're talking. The hearing is Friday.
The jury did.
And
it was a majority. It wasn't.
Yeah, but we don't live in a majority, Marjorie.
Right, but
So it
that's what I'm
doesn't
telling
matter.
you. 9-3, 8-4. Guilty
Which means hung
guilty.
jury.
It's hung jury.
It's a hung jury. That's what I'm saying. But the majority of the jury, it's a hung jury. But they did not.
There was
buy.
no unanimity on guilt of
Right.
anything. That is
the bottom line.
It could be
Okay.
11-1. It still doesn't count.
Okay, so Sue, I never heard of the executive director of GLAAD, which is a hugely important organization.
And we should be clear, it's not the local GLAAD, the Gay
It's
and
the
Lesbian
national.
Advocates and Defenders, who now go by a different name. This is the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. So they have two A's.
Okay,
We
and this-
call it in the gays, we call it GLAAD. Let's get an extra A. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
I have to say, this woman is living the life
Yeah.
of
Living
Ralph
the life.
De La Torre.
Yeah.
From Stewart. Could you describe, was it the New York Times that did this
Yes.
lengthy expose? What's going on here and
So,
what's the reaction?
I'll say first that a number of folks who work for GLAAD with two A's feel that this article was a retaliation against GLAAD's criticism of how the New York Times has been covering trans issues. I just want to say that because I know if I don't say it, someone will start texting me and emailing me. And
Are they questioning any of the facts?
No.
How has the New York Times been covering trans issues?
Many people believe they've not been doing a very good job over the past 2 years.
Well, there are a lot
covering
of
trans
newspapers
issues.
on the boxer in the Olympics
Yes.
that did a very bad job.
Yes.
On is it Khelif is how you pronounce
Yes,
the boxer's
I
name?
believe so.
Until they apologize for their mistakes. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
So Sarah Kate Ellis is the executive director of GLAAD, and what GLAAD does.
Do you know her, by the way?
No,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of GLAAD's. I should
Okay.
also say I've been very public over the past 20 years,
Why?
30 years, because I'm not a big fan of policing speech. And in the early days, as much as I believe it's essential for representation and for, if you're going to be the only character in a movie and who's LGBTQ and you're the trans person and you're the murderer, and that keeps happening, that's a problem. So demanding representation, demanding storylines that are more representative of what our life experiences are is important. But at the same time, when you're sitting in the writer's room, as GLAAD has done in the past, or making threats to, and not like big time threats, just making threats to writers and producers about what you want, I feel that it's an overreach. So and plus I never won a GLAAD award, so that's
not a good
another
reason.
issue.
Could you,
I have, actually. I think it's...
no, the local GLAAD is the one
local
you've won.
GLAAD.
Could you list some of the excesses?
Yes, let's point
Go
out.
ahead.
Let's just read the first paragraph of this story in the New York Times. A light rain fell at the Zurich airport one Sunday morning in January 2023 as Sarah Kate Ellis made her way from a seat in Delta's most exclusive cabin to waiting Mercedes, there to chauffeur her to the Swiss Alps, where she and her colleagues would stay at the Tivoli Lodge, a 7-bedroom chalet that cost almost $500,000 to rent for a single week.
By the way, this is a non-profit.
Non-profit, yeah. So the big headline here is that if you donated to GLAAD, you donated to a chandelier. If you donated to GLAAD, you donated to $20,000 reconstruction of her home office, which may have been a tax violation. You donated to a Provincetown summer house. You donated to a day of skiing in Aspen. The pushback on this is if you are in the entertainment business, this is where the entertainment moguls are. So therefore, you have to be able to keep up to argue with them. Of course, the other pushback is you shouldn't be flying first class if you're using charitable donations to do it. And this is really, I think, the close proximity issue, whereas if you think you are a movie producer, you're going to start acting like a movie producer and spending money like this. So overall, I think, again, it's another good lesson that if you're making a donation somewhere, if you're on a board of an organization, you should know where the money's going.
Can you make that distinction one more time? Because the local organization is so hugely important.
The gay and lesbian advocates and defenders that are here, that have are national, they're based in Boston, they have argued for same-sex marriage. Mary Bonato is someone whose name you know.
The lawyers who's ever walked the planet.
Has made the arguments for inclusion in the St. Patrick's Day parade, a host of issues, squeaky clean organization that we all love. But this GLAAD, as we say, as I said in the gay world, is GLAAD with 2 A's, Gay and Lesbians Alliance Against Defamation.
That's a good way to remember. It's like a mnemonic device kind of thing.
You know, it also says her salary in a new contract was going to be between $700,000 and $1.3 million a year. So she probably could have afforded her own chalet herself.
Yeah, I mean, the excesses, these things, they just start, you know, it's a creep, right? It just starts little by little. You start spending more money and more things happen. And it's just, you know, it's charitable organizations, if you're getting donations, you should spend the money on the things that you need to spend on and not, you know, first class and chandeliers.
I like that. Okay, fine.
Okay, do we want to talk about the Olympic boxer? Are we out of time here?
Well, we sort of touched on it a second ago. I am... Should I be stunned? No, I'm not stunned.
Yeah, tell us the story.
Tell us the story briefly and the jump to wrong judgment here.
Yeah, I mean, the issue here is that you've got this young boxer from Algeria, Imane Khelif, who people like J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk and others have accused them of being a male. And even though the Olympic Committee has done their testing, whatever requirements they have to see if someone is male or female, and has determined that Imane Khelif is a female, and even though the boxing organization, the World Boxing Organization, which is controlled by a Russian president who also decided after Khelif beat the Russian boxer that therefore Khelif must be a male, the fight here is not about trans inclusion, which is what many people are trying to make it about, and it's worth a conversation having. But this is a person who was born female, who lived her life female, is not trans, has had no medical or otherwise intervention. And due to the testing that the Olympics are doing, she qualifies as a female and is fighting people in boxing, in Olympic sport, as female. And they're making it into something that it's not. Now, if there's different testing they want to do, we can have that argument, and we could talk about other stuff.
No, but the different testing that disqualified her and one other was done by an organization that I've read is totally controlled by the Russians.
Russians, right. It's a complete Russian disinformation issue. And, you know, the biological advantage that elite athletes have over each other, I always love this. Well, would you want a boxer? Of course I wouldn't want a boxer. I don't want to box anybody. Anybody could knock me out with their pinky. I also wanted to be an Olympic athlete, and sadly had no talent. Right? So,
wait a minute, you were really
riflery.
Good.
If I'd known,
I watched women's skeet shooting the other day when training was. No, I didn't think of you.
You could have been a legendary skeet shooter.
I still can.
You still can, that's
you
right.
ever done skeet shooting?
I have, it's great.
They throw the thing up in the air.
It hurts your shoulder a lot.
And then you got to shoot it while it's flying around.
Yes, it's not easy. But I'm just saying
very nerve-wracking.
These, you know, you are biologically and genetically gifted in many different ways.
Who is?
All of us are, individually, Jim.
Okay,
you know, and if you happen to be the build that can be a boxer, that's what it is. I mean, Michael Phelps' lung capacity is much bigger than most swimmers.
What do you think of his great hairdo with the thing on top of his head? Was that? I thought he looked fabulous.
He's great.
Didn't you?
Snoop Dogg. I'm all for Snoop Dogg.
$500,000 a day.
I'm for it.
For Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Snoop Dogg's career and how he started, he's been accused of murder. He's been arrested in airports all around the world for marijuana. He and Martha Stewart, the unlikely couple,
doing dressage.
Well, they have their own TV show. I mean, they had a TV show for a while. I mean, this is what America is about. No matter what you've done, you can overcome it and get paid $500,000 a year. To show up at the Olympics.
Sort of like you can be, I don't know, convicted of maybe 34 felonies and found liable for rape and be elected president of the United States.
You can be one of the greatest political families, and just leave a baby cub in a bike lane.
That's another.
I tell you. I take it back about Snoop Dogg. He and Martha together discussing dressage was something to be seen.
Yes, it's a
they're
beautiful
They're in
thing.
their riding ensembles. They're all decked out.
We gotta go, but were you into dressage like Marjorie? Marjorie was like wild about dressage.
Well,
Not at all.
horses, the
I feel
horses
bad
are
for the
so
horse. I feel bad for the
incredible.
horse.
Well, she feels bad for the
I feel
horse,
bad
don't
for the
you?
horse.
You don't think they like it?
They're doing
No, would you like it? I
artificial
wouldn't like
things
it.
that they don't do. Let's
No.
see you prancing around the studio. Why don't you prance around in front of the audience here?
But
Yeah,
watching them is
You know,
pretty cool.
there is a group you can join and dress up like a horse and do that. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll text you.
Tell me, tell me later.
Text her. Don't text
I
me.
won't text you.
Okay, we have been speaking with
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We have been
Thank
speaking
you.
with our
Sue
media
O'Connell.
maven, Sue O'Connell. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows
She
of the
is.
South End News and co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. Thank you, Sue. Up next, Carol Rose of the ACLU of Massachusetts joins us to talk about the sweeping change in migrant policy here in Massachusetts, what Boston's new surveillance report says as well about technologies used by the city's police to monitor us all. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The state's free college program is expanding to now include all financially qualified residents, regardless of their age. While supporters are thrilled,
this draws students who wouldn't otherwise go into higher education, which is good.
Critics are concerned about student outcomes.
Once they are enrolled, do they have enough support system, enough financial aid to actually persist and complete?
I'm Kurt Carapezza. Find this story now on gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Regal Music Theater, presenting An American in Paris, the story of a young American soldier and a beautiful French girl, based on the Gene Kelly film with music by George and Ira Gershwin. Opens August 9th. RegalMusicTheater.org. And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, providing resources and tools to help you navigate the college planning process, including customized plans of savings, loans, and guidance. More information at mefa.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now at the library by Carol Rose, Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union, of Massachusetts. She joins us monthly. Hey, Carol.
It's great to be here.
How are you?
Hi.
Nice to see you.
How are you? So I don't know how obsessed you are, but Jim and I are clearly obsessed by the dysfunction of the Massachusetts legislature. We were just talking a little while ago about things that could have been really great and not really controversial, like expanding the ability to get liquor licenses in the city of Boston where people can't get them and they can't run
Really
the restaurants.
basic.
Or in the midst of these opioid tragedy, embracing supervised consumption sites by town. This wasn't an edict coming down from on high. A whole bunch of other things, the economic development bill, all these things. So what do you think over there, Carol?
Well, I have to say, after a 2-year, legislative session, a 23-hour marathon session at the end, it's really discouraging. And you guys know I'm like Miss Sunshine when I come on this program. But it was a very discouraging legislative session. It was disappointing that so little got done. Now, there were a few high points, I just have to say. I mean, I think that, some of the good things that were there were the Parentage Act, right, which was the bill that basically says that when same-sex couples engage in IVF, they don't have to adopt their own children, kind of a basic thing that you would want to do. There's some stuff on housing and tenants' rights. A year ago, they passed something on people who are incarcerated can actually make phone calls. So there were a couple things that were good, but there were a whole lot of things that were left on the table, not just the economic development bill, but things that we're hoping, like things where lives are on the line. I mean, actual human lives. And a couple I just want to mention I think are important. One is the comprehensive maternal health care bill was left on the
What
floor.
exactly did that do?
So what this bill would have done was actually expand access to midwives and to out-of-hospital options and things like that, just to make sure that people can actually, because it's so hard to access medical care, that this would have created more options for people.
And there's a huge disparity between white women of means and black women, black women with means, because we've seen terrible things with racism in the medical system, but this was a no-brainer.
Right, this was a no-brainer, and we're hoping that they might come back. I mean, there's some talk that they're going to come back into formal session or have informal sessions, so we're hoping that that might still get passed. And then the other one is really this bill that you were talking about, Marjorie, to have overdose prevention centers, to enable those to go forward. I mean, when you think about it, every year 2,000 people die from overdoses here in Massachusetts, right? So in a legislative session, that's 4,000 people. And it's not just the people who die, it's also their families, their children, their siblings, their parents, their spouses are affected by this. Thousands of people are dying. To say that we have to wait for another 2-year legislative session,
that's right,
means that it's another 4,000 people who we're talking about who may be at risk.
We should explain what that means. They don't, when they come back in January after the, I don't know if you know this, 5-month vacation, they have to start all over again.
Yeah,
they don't pick up where they were in July. They got to refile the bills. And let me tell you something about safe consumption or anything else. I would be okay, even though I would disagree, if they voted any of these things down. They don't even show that level of respect to their constituents that we either favor it or we don't. They just leave it lying there as they go off on their travels. And I have to say, you're a good government group. I know you don't endorse candidates. There's got to be some good government reform here. I didn't know till we spoke to Matt Stout and
Samantha Gross.
Samantha Gross yesterday that I read a piece of theirs that this 5-month crap is a rule. It is not some constitutional provision that good government groups came up with. There's got to be something that forces them to change the rule. We're like normal people, like the governor, like the mayor, like everybody in the room who has a job. You actually work 11 plus months a year. It's unconscionable. And if people are not, the reason we're going to mention this every day is if people are not upset about this, they got to look at themselves in the mirror, because this is a real serious problem. It's undemocratic and they're not serving their constituents.
No, and we have a trifecta here in Massachusetts.
What do you mean?
I'm saying one party controls both houses and the governorship.
It's a problem.
And yet they cannot seem to be able to move forward on some pretty fundamental things where actual, public health, where human lives are on the line.
Well, that's why they can't move forward, because even if you're a big-time Democrat out there, you have to acknowledge, because no one fears for their job, except maybe a governor, because there's almost no Republicans who run against you, you can do whatever the hell you please, including leave for 5 months.
But the setup is corrupt in the sense that if leadership decides how much money you're going to make, you're not going to be in there bitching and moaning. I shouldn't have said that.
That's fine. You mean the stipends they get?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it'd be 20,000, 40,000, 60,000. You're not going to be complaining, because this is going to be your salary. It takes a lot of chutzpah to do that when you're
Well, that's one reform they could do. Raise everybody's salary, no stipends.
Well, the other reform they could do is open up the damn process so people could see what goes on out there.
Apply the public records
law.
law.
Because you can't know how your own state representative or senator votes in many instances, because everything is behind closed doors. As Samantha Gross was saying yesterday, she was in Florida, of all places. A lot of us disparage. Well, in Florida, 2 or more legislators meeting together constitutes a meeting.
An open meeting which you're entitled to attend.
Yes, and their transparency laws. We have the worst, I think, in the entire country of transparency.
No, we get an F on transparency here in Massachusetts. And the other thing I just want to mention that Mayor Wu talked about earlier today was this home rule problem. Because, our cities and our towns are desperate for reforms. They're ready to make reforms. They want to make reforms. And they're sort of the pilots, right? They're the laboratories of democracy. But if every time they go and they try to make a reform, they have to go and get permission from the state legislature, that's another anti-democratic mechanism.
Did you hear what the mayor said?
What?
That if the taxes of the people in the city of Boston go up, she's going to make sure that they realize that that's because of the legislature failing.
No, she said the state Senate.
She
said the state Senate, because the House did pass her reclassification of the property tax thing.
So it's Karen Spilka's fault.
That's essentially what she had the courage to say it. We're talking to Carol Rose from the Civil Liberties Union. Tomorrow, Carol, we talked about a shot spotter before, even though I'd like you to tell people what it is and what your problem is one more time. Because Bill Bratton, former police commissioner here in New York and Los Angeles, and the CEO of ShotSpotter is going to be joining us here tomorrow at the library. And we'd like to credibly and accurately explain what your concern is. What is ShotSpotter and why do you have a problem with it?
So ShotSpotter is a technology that involves, cameras and audio surveillance and things like that to try to see when there's been the sound of gunfire that then you send in police. And that sounds really good. I mean, we all care about, being safe and doing that. But every study that has been undertaken in dozens of cities across the country has shown that it doesn't work. And in fact, it's counterproductive insofar as it leads police into false positives. So just for example, here in Boston, we got some records and we analyzed them, and it showed that 70% of the time, there wasn't any gunfire. It could be somebody going over a metal plate. It could be somebody with fireworks. You can say, well, no harm, no foul. But the problem is it actually leads to over-policing in certain communities because the vast majority of this technology is put into communities of color here in Massachusetts. It's expensive. It's $4 million has been spent on this here in Boston. And that could be used for community policing or other kinds of ways to make sure that our communities are kept safe. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that all these other cities have discontinued it. So everything from Fall River here in Massachusetts decided not to go forward with it, but Charlotte, San Antonio, San Diego, and most recently Chicago decided they weren't going to go forward because ShotSpotter was implicated in the death of a young 13-year-old, Adam Toledo, because the cops came running in, they thought that they heard gunfire, and they shot this 13-year-old to death. So Chicago has abandoned it. So I think it's important that while we have to find ways, and certainly the ACLU cares deeply about public safety, thinking that technology is going to solve it, it just doesn't. And the other thing I just want to mention, what is it? It also involves humans in the chain. So there's a lot of opportunity for human failure, human frailties. So they get the report, a human looks at it, and then they send out the police. And of course, if you've put all of these ShotSpotter technologies into communities of color, that's going to lead to over-policing in communities.
I have deep concerns about the over-policing, but there was a story in the Boston Herald on the 1st about how a shooting victim in JP, according to the Deputy Police Superintendent John Brown, was saved because of ShotSpotter. You don't deny that. You just say that's outweighed. I'm asking a question,
Right.
not a statement. That's outweighed by the over-policing false positive concerns.
I think there's a lot of over-policing. And I think that, we don't know that they were saved by ShotSpotter versus eyewitnesses, people who are around.
Well, but the police, I don't know either, but the police department is saying they were saved, is what I'm saying.
Right. So I think that the most important thing is if the Boston Police Department, if the city of Boston decides they want to go forward with this, it's tremendously important that we, the people of Boston and of Massachusetts, insist that there are civil rights and civil liberties protections with policies put into place. Not to let the company that's profiting from this set the policies, but that the city itself set policies.
Well, Mayor Wu told us an hour ago she supports it. And
Right, but
she's a civil
policies?
libertarian, is she not? Do you not consider
She's also
one?
the mayor, right.
I understand that.
Right, but I think that it's really important that we balance, if they decide to go forward and to spend money on this, which I don't think they should, but if they choose to, it's really important that we insist that there be some protections in place, some policies.
Like what?
Just to make sure that it's the human chain of command isn't put in there, that it's deployed equally in white communities as well as communities of color. That we track and see how it's doing over time and that we report that publicly. There are a lot of protections we could put in place to make sure that if we decide to go forward with this, we at least have some protections to see if it's actually working the way that we hope it is and that it's not leading to unwarranted policing.
Has the mayor been unwilling to entertain your concerns and Cade's, your wonderful technology person's
no. I mean, we
concerns?
have a very strong relationship with the mayor, and we talk to them about it. We don't always agree on everything.
Sure.
But yeah, we have open lines of communication. I think this is just one where we disagree.
So just so I'm clear for tomorrow, there are, with changes, you might revise your perspective, but you think there need to be greater protections built into its use.
Right, and
if it's going to continue.
And in the deployment, like where are we deploying?
I understand.
Are we going to deploy it in, Beacon Hill? In the same way we deploy it in Roxbury.
Well, I assume, but wouldn't they say there aren't shootings in the same number, on Beacon Hill? So why would we put it in a place where there are fewer
because
incidents?
there are so many false positives. We don't know.
Okay.
Like there's a fair amount of, if you over police in a community of color, you're going to have more arrests if you're over policing, and if you under police in another community, some suburban community, you're going to have fewer.
So the Boston cops say that you guys were wrong at the ACLU about this piñata activating a ShotSpotter. How'd you?
Yeah, no, it was a misread by one of our analysts, but we took that out. But that doesn't account for the fact that every other study that's been done across the country has shown the same thing. So it's that was just one example. But whether it's fireworks or metal plates or all these other kinds of things, don't let one incident sort of say that therefore there's no validity to any of it. There's a lot of validity to it. So, you know, there's just so many. It's not just here. It's in Chicago. It's in San Antonio. All the places it's been tried and tested has been shown that it's problematic.
So talking with Carol Rose from the ACLU, there have been so many stories in recent days about migrants who've come here from other countries. The Globe reporter who did this one, Helena Getjahan Hawkins and Beatriz Cabral Letan, probably massacring their names, so I'm not going to keep doing that. But anyway, they had a little anecdote here about this couple from Haiti, and we all know that things are horrible in Haiti. The 31-year-old husband and the 29-year-old wife, they've been living in a temporary shelter that had been a laundromat before that, and they had their young son in a stroller, and the little kid was listening to Baby Shark on the smartphone, that song, as they were pushing him along in the stroller. Anyway, they've been evicted from this shelter, and these and other people are worried about living on the streets. The governor's talked about how much this is all costing, and that that is why she's had to act to give people 5 days to get out of these shelters, and she's prioritizing people from Massachusetts. But I'm wondering where the ACLU is on all this.
Well, I will just say, first of all, we are paying incredibly close attention to what's going on and trying to figure out what the options are, because it's really hard. I mean, there really is a crisis. But the notion that we would, as a people, say, okay, you're just going to be evicted. Your family's just going to be put on the streets. And by the way, then we have another, legislation that says we can arrest people for being on the streets and that you can't sleep anywhere. And, the U.S. Supreme Court just passed a law, or issued a ruling, the Grants Pass ruling out of Idaho, that says that people don't have a right to sleep, And so how do you not sleep? Like, that's the most cruel form of torture that you can do. And we're talking about children and families. So while I understand that, I think the motive is to say, we'll give you a ticket if you leave. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to do, is just to drive people up. But where are we driving them to? Because it's happening across the country. So we need to have fair and humane immigration reform in this country. And I think that we can come around to.
But meanwhile, that's not happening anytime soon.
Exactly.
So what do we do right now? She's talking about I think it's up to $1 billion, the governor said it's costing for shelters around the Commonwealth.
Yep. And I just don't see any other way. What are we going to do? Say that we're going to expect our churches, and our synagogues and our mosques to take care of the people?
So I guess that's the question: how much do we spend?
Right. Well,
but see, this is what I don't understand. We're the only state with the right to shelter law.
Right.
And a judge determined a few months ago that the right to shelter law is not a right to shelter. I mean, that's essentially how I read the judge's decision, and it seemed to me to be pretty clear and straightforward that the state had an obligation, but obviously the court in this case gave the administration the power not to provide shelter. Right. And I have to say, well, I surely don't want to defend Healy. There's a huge amount of financial pressure, needless to say.
Yep.
At the same time, when we were asking her about it the other day, it was pretty clear to me she was pained by this decision. So what is the solution? Just figure out where to get more money?
I mean, it goes back to what we got to go to the legislature. That's where the money gets appropriated. And I know, which is a discouraging thing. But I'm just going to say that once this Friday is when we're going to start seeing families on the street, whether they're sleeping in the subway stations.
It's unimaginably horrible.
Unimaginably horrible.
horrible.
And we've said they can't be in the hospitals, in the emergency rooms, and they can't be at Logan Airport, and they can't be here, and they can't be there. Well, they're going to be on the streets, and they're going to be in our parks. And if we, as a people, don't care about that, then for shame. I mean, we have to find a way to go forward. We have to find a way, and I do think it's a combination of immediate response, emergency responses for shelter, and then we as a nation have to go back and talk about comprehensive immigration reform. People, when you say, do you want tough on immigrants or not? When you talk about, the threats at the border and that kind of stuff, sure, that stuff sells. But the reality of it is, the vast majority of people want a fair and humane immigration system, and they don't want to see people and children sleeping on the streets and dying in our parks. And my concern is that's what we're going to see. And if we think that shelter is expensive, I will tell you that that's going to be more expensive.
You know who could pay for it? One of Clarence Thomas's friends. He's got a ton of money. So, there's another revelation about Clarence Thomas' failure to disclose, what's his name, Harlan Crow, the billionaire conservative who flies him everywhere. He's on his yacht. Another, oops, I didn't report this thing. There is no other any judge in the federal system below a Supreme Court justice who these things had been found out about would be gone.
Would they gone.
not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So he is not. Joe Biden finally, and I have to say finally, I think it was a little long in coming, said he's going to file legislation, or at least it supports legislation, that would do a bunch of things, provide term limits, make the ethical rules tougher and enforceable. The Supreme Court passed their own ethics rules, but they're unenforceable.
Right.
And what's the third thing that he...
no presidential immunity.
No presidential immunity, which arguably would have to be a constitutional amendment. And by the way, term limits, people like Nancy Gertner and Judge Gertner and Larry Tribe, who are on the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court, think that term limits require a constitutional amendment, but expansion of the court does not, because it's been done many times by Congress through the years, and that's not something that Joe Biden supported. I'm assuming he did this not just for electoral reasons, but also because once you put down your marker, it's a lot easier to argue about an issue when there's a proposal.
Right.
Is that what this is all about?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, right now, this isn't going to pass through Congress, whether it needs a constitutional amendment or whether it could be done by statute with a congressional act. Either way, it's not going to pass right now, right, because of the nature of Congress. But I think that it's important that people start to talk about it, that we need to name it, that we need to talk about that there are alternatives that would address the issue, and we need to vote our values in November at the ballot box. Because if Congress is in the way, then we, the people, need to rise up. And, you know, the Supreme Court's popularity or trust, I think, trust in the Supreme Court is like at a historic low. I think it's like maybe 16% or 14% of people. That's crazy. Like, you know, our system.
And the 16% are all donating to the justices, by the way. So it's really nobody.
Oh, actually, Harlan Crow bought that.
Harlan Crow, exactly.
But I think it's really important that we talk about these things. You know, they do change over time. When we begin to change the public conversation about these issues, and to your point, Jim, when we have an actual proposal on the table, then we can begin to make change. But naming the thing is the first step towards changing it.
What did you think about Justice Gorsuch, Neil Gorsuch, telling Biden to, quote unquote, be careful about his proposals to change the Supreme Court?
It sounds like a threat. I mean, these justices are like scofflaws. You know, it's incredible. Because they're saying, you know, they're just driven by ideology. And that's why people have lost faith in the court, and it's incredibly discouraging. Now, I do want to say one thing to everybody, which is I don't think, you know, here I am from the ACLU, and we work in the courts, we work in Congress and legislatures, we work in the field, we work in communications, so we have an integrated approach to law and policy reform. But the courts are not completely useless. There's a lot of things that we can do get done.
Hell of
I'm just going to say
that is really a lot of praise. They're not completely useless.
Well, the
That's
Supreme
great.
Court is, right. But the lower courts, you know, there's a lot that we can still do and that we will do. And we are getting ready for whatever comes in November. You know, the ACLU has been here more than 100 years. It started here in Massachusetts. And we've seen a lot of presidents come and go. And we will fight in the courts, we will fight on the streets, online, and we will protect people's civil rights and civil liberties. But it's very discouraging right now to think of what we're up against at the highest court in the land.
Can we, speaking of the highest court, we only have 2 minutes left. They did the right thing on one thing recently. This total hack attorney general in Missouri filed a case directly with the Supreme Court. Well, he's running for re-election, and he's got an opponent, so he has to grandstand for Trump. He files a lawsuit against New York State, and I didn't know if a state versus state automatically goes to the Supreme Court, basically saying any gag order against Trump limits the ability of his residents in Missouri to get what they're entitled to under the First Amendment. And it was rejected. Of course, who were the two justices who wanted briefs on the issue? Alito and Thomas. The two bought justices. Well, Alito, we don't know he's bought, right? We just know he's got upside-down flags.
He took a lot of trips, too.
Did he?
I think so,
he did. Of course he did. Fishing and all that sort of thing. So the amazing part of this, because I'd totally forgotten, is on September 6th, Judge Merchant, in the trial where Trump was convicted of these roughly 3 dozen felonies, is going to hold a hearing on whether or not the immunity decision affects certain limited testimony in those trials to the point where it taints all the convictions, in which case he'd throw out all the convictions. If he doesn't, the Supreme Court says the sentencing shall go ahead on September 18th. You're a month and a half from a presidential election. It's arguably going to be a dead heat or close to a dead heat. What does a judge do in terms of a fair sentencing that is not wildly small d Democratic. I mean, Trump is a criminal, but he is the nominee of one of the major parties. So what does a judge do in that kind of situation?
A good judge should call it as they see it, based on the law and based on the facts, and without fear or favor, because no one should be above the law. We don't elect kings in this country. We elect presidents.
So what do? You put him under house arrest for a month of the last 2 months of the campaign?
They're going to appeal it. So he's not going to go under house arrest. They're going to appeal it and delay it. I mean, delay has been the tactic of Trump's lawyers throughout. So I don't think that anything's going to happen. And it's worked very well.
Yeah.
But again,
what do you think is an appropriate sentence in this case?
I don't know, Jim. I mean, for 34 felony counts, that's a lot of felony counts.
It is a lot of felony counts.
How about 8 to 10 at Walpole? What do you think?
See you there.
All right, Carol
Rose, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks so much.
We've been speaking with Carol Rose. She's Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Carol, thank you very, very much. Up next, TJ and Hadley Douglas of Urban Grape Wine Store join us to talk about summer wines brightening up this rainy day. Actually, it's not raining quite so much anymore. And get Jim a little tipsy because it doesn't take much. They're also going to detail their unique method of selling wine. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
In for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, we'll have local reaction to Vice President Kamala Harris's decision to pick Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. And we'll hear what Governor Maura Healey has to say about unfinished business on Beacon Hill. Plus, with local hospital closures just a few weeks away, there's another bankruptcy hearing today for Steward Healthcare. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Shriners Children's Boston. Accidents happen, and when those accidents involve a burn injury of any size, Shriners Children's Boston is the place to turn for any burn. Shriners Children's Boston, the most amazing care anywhere.
And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being a renewable energy partner for New England and working to fight climate change. Learn more at sunbugsolar.com.
I'm Jamie Bologna, executive producer of Boston Public Radio, and this is 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan, broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by TJ and Hadley Douglas. Are we allowed to say they're our favorite wine people? We're not.
They are our favorite wine people.
Okay, our favorite
Absolutely.
wine people, owners of Urban Grape Wine Store, which just opened a new outlet in D.C. We'll talk about it. Theirs is the #1 black and women-owned wine retailer in the country. They're all about, exactly, Marjorie, I just said that. They're all about making wine easy to comprehend and bringing diversity to those who sell it and those who buy it. It's summer, so we're going to be tasting wines that pair well with fruits, I'm told. TJ and Hadley, it is wonderful to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. Okay. First of all, because people may not know, and there are those, I said this to you before, that don't really know anything about wine, but I kind of do know my palate and what I like. So explain, why don't you start with the method that you use for arranging your wines?
No. I'm going to explain it.
I'm
going to explain it.
Explain it. Okay.
This I want to hear.
TJ has explained it to us so many times.
But
I'm embarrassed.
Many people
I'm
may
going to
not
try,
know, Jim.
and then TJ and Hadley will tell me if I'm getting it. Now, we have at our place a progressive wine scale. You familiar with that?
I am.
You are? Okay, so here's how it works. Let me explain it. We number wines from 1 to 10. You with me so far, Hadley?
I'm with you.
You are fine, okay. 1 is, for example, I'd say, to make a comparison, analogies like skim milk. And 10 would be, let's say, cream. You still with me, TJ?
I am.
Okay, so we don't do varietal things, which confuse people like Jim Browdy, who knows nothing about wine, but you decide sort of how rich and full-bodied you want your wine to be. And by the way, we initiated this whole progressive thing. Did I do well?
You did. I'm sold.
Okay, there you go. I mean, that is what this fabulous progressive wine scale is, which is really, for the likes of me, who's not a connoisseur but love wine, it is the ultimate great thing.
Jim, your shift starts at 4 p.m.
Well, you know what the other thing is? If I were to say to you what I like, for a white wine, I would like kind of the skim milk kind of deal. And the red wine, I would like the cream kind of deal. So it makes it so easy to pick out the wines that you want. And I think that's a wonderful service for we customers.
So palates have gotten so much better over the years.
That's right.
Yes, from when we first came in here. No, you guys are pros now.
Well, let me tell you, when you first came in here, I kind of tell a lie. While we liked you, I didn't think you were going to build an empire. I have to say, you just opened in January a place twice as big as Columbus Avenue in D.C., right?
Yes. So in Boston, we're on Columbus Avenue in the South End, and in January we opened in the Shaw neighborhood in Washington D.C., right near the convention center, historically called their Black Broadway. It's an area that's really being revived. Reminds us so much of the South End when we open there, which is really exciting. There's a lot of energy, a lot of neighborhood vibe. So it's been going really well, and it's really fun down there.
So, you know what, I just want to get this right, because I'm not sure I did get it right. When I said you were the number one black and woman, you're the number one something, TJ, that is really important. I know that. Whatever, what is it? You are the, what are you exactly?
I don't know. I'm going to ask what am I?
Well, we're a certified MBE. TJ's the majority owner, so we're a certified black-owned business, and we're the largest certified black-owned wine retail business in the country.
That's pretty incredible, isn't it? I mean, it really is. And
all started here in Boston.
I know that. And one of your, and you've, since the first day we met you many years ago, your goal was not just to succeed yourselves, but to spread the wealth. Make sure that there were more people of color in positions like yours, and more people of color were enjoying and purchasing. How's that going in the X number of years you've been doing this?
You know what, when we started the Urban Grape Wine Studies Award for students of color at Boston University, what it allows people to come into this industry, and consumers can actually see themselves represented. So not only are you adding more workers to the wine industry, you're actually adding more drinkers to the wine industry as well.
And I met one of the interns when I was at your place a couple of years ago. Are they staying? I mean, when they do their first thing and they get either situated at Urban Grape or some other place, do they stay in the industry, or is this
They definitely stay in the industry, but some of them use their previous experiences, whether it's in journalism or in agriculture, and they use our program and then get careers that match their previous industries. So it's fascinating. We're now just starting cohort number 5.
Yeah, which is pretty neat. And we've done these wine tasting things where we've had different sommeliers, which is really neat. We've done them for the station. And it's wonderful to get these people that know everything there is about their particular wine, and they can educate you on how to drink the wine and swish the glass around and smell the wine and taste the wine and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be a fun career if you ask me, being a sommelier. Yeah. That's what you call them, right? Sommeliers.
Yes, sommeliers. Yep. Okay. But it's also fun because you know, the wine industry really touches everything, right? It touches agriculture, constitutional law, immigration,
climate
tourism,
change.
right? It touches everything. So the wine industry is not just about being a sommelier. It's about, bringing these wines to your glass and being able to sell them and learn about them.
When you say climate change, it's because of the things we've heard about, like in Northern California, where they've had some terrible fires involving a lot of that kind of thing.
Not just the fires, but they're having to change what they're planting and growing to be more heat resistant, drought resistant. This is happening all over the world. Yeah.
We talked the other day. They're moving away from almonds and arugula, for example, to things that are more drought resistant. So we have a lot more to talk about. What's the first wine?
So we're doing summer wines, and we wanted to pick some fruits that are great summer fruits. So we're going to talk about things that pair well with apples, strawberries, and melon. So we brought 3 whites, all lighter bodied, so 2s on our progressive scale for the whites, really high lemonade acid. And then we chose a 4 on our progressive scale, red wine, but we're drinking it chilled. So so the glasses that you have in front of you, we always drink from left to right. Okay. So the one that you have in your front left is wine number 1.
Okay.
And this is a wine from Portugal, a Vinho Verde made from a grape called Alvarinho. And the producer is is Ruggiero Faustau. And this is light and bright and really high in acid. And so when you take a sip, you're professional drinkers now, so take a sip of that.
Should you eat the fruit first or no?
No. I always
Okay.
like to do everything kind of raw first, and then you can do the pairing, right? So you might not even need the fruit, it's that good. But when you take
this
a bite...
is right up Marjorie's alley.
Yeah, so when you take a
This
bite of
wine.
the apple, it's gonna make it feel really tart and very, very fresh. I can see your face. I mean, I know we're on radio, but her face is amazing
we're
right now.
streaming this too.
So think about if this was, 2 days ago and it was 85 degrees and humid.
Yeah.
How amazing is this wine to refresh your palate?
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it is,
And
like
then-
you say, like a 1 or it's a 2, you said, right?
This is a 2,
This is
so
what
it's
I
like
like. I
skim
like
milk.
the skim milk kind of thing in
Yeah.
the white wine.
So now take another sip now that you've had some food on your palate. So how great is this? And Vino Verdes are typically unoaked, and they come out really, really close to after the wines are picked in like September, October. So it keeps actually the price down. So like we crush this wine at $20.
Let me just say something. I say this every time you bring white wine. I know I'm boring by saying I don't like white wine.
We know.
And you always pick. Thank you, Hadley. And you always pick white wine that is really thrilling. So what is it, by the way?
You're drinking the wrong white wine.
Well, maybe
Jim.
I am. Is that all it is?
I think
mean,
it is. I think it is. You like your big blends, your Zinfandels. You're a 7, 8, 9 guy.
But
on the
this is a
progressive scale.
2 white. So why do I like this?
Because that's what you like for your red wines. This is a different time of year, and it's refreshing to you.
It is really
And
refreshing.
what's not to like about this wine? It's high acidity, really just incredibly tasty, has great fruit flavor. So what's not to like?
Okay, so before we go to the second one, we got to clarify something with you so we don't end your careers. We have been bad-mouthing the legislature nonstop. It's sort of what we've developed as a cottage industry. And one of the stories in the Globe, we wanted you to exonerate yourselves, has one of the state reps, who we're probably criticizing because we criticized them all, buying from our favorite wine operation, Urban Grape. So go ahead.
Well, I'm going to take this one.
Okay.
TJ immediately
I'm
looked
like,
at
it's
me.
great. Supporting a local business.
Listen, the second, because we get the little Google, pop-ups whenever we're mentioned, and I saw that in the Globe, and I was like, oh God, here we go, because the Globe comment section will just destroy anything. But luckily, they were focused correctly on the politicians instead of on our store. I mean,
you're just doing your thing.
We're just doing our thing. People come in and shop with us. From what I understand, it's legal how they're spending the money. My only thing is, and this is across the board, I wish they wouldn't go to the Palm and drop $100,000. I wish they would keep that in our local economy, locally owned businesses, small businesses, because it has a huge impact on our bottom line. So,
well, actually, buying from you was the only decent thing they did as
in
far
that
as
whole article,
concerned.
in that whole article, I saw us as the one bright spot.
And they did need it for late night work. I don't know if most of us could get away with that, saying,
Listen,
I'm going
it
to come
was-
in and drop $1,800 because we're going to be working late, Jim and I,
It was
back at the station with Jamie and our staff.
$1,800 with us versus like $30,000 with other people. So.
Perfect. You satisfied our
Was it
concerns.
30,000?
I mean, there was a lot of money being spent. Yeah.
Was that also for a late night session? My God, that's a lot
That
of
was
booze.
at the restaurants and the cigar
That was
places.
indeed.
Oh, okay.
We're talking
okay.
to TJ and Hadley Douglas, obviously from the great Urban Grape operation. What's number 2 here?
So now we're going to go down to Crete in Greece.
Love
and
Crete.
so we're drinking a grape called Assyrtiko. And Assyrtiko is traditionally grown in Santorini, but this is about 80 miles south of that. And this is going to be focused more on kind of like the melon. But if you think about where you are, you're growing at about 1,300 feet on an island over the ocean. So it has this salted melon characteristic with really high like lemonade acid to it.
Marjorie's
so just
so
picture this
happy.
with like a little melon and maybe some
Oh my
sardines
God.
or octopus or something, right? Or
Oh
just
my
by
gosh.
itself.
What number is this?
This is also a 2.
Oh.
So 2 different flavors, and I did this on purpose.
They're very
because
different.
They're very different
Very
in
different.
flavor, but they have the same tactile sensation, mouthfeel.
Marjorie's plans for her whole afternoon changed.
They have. That is right.
So what do you think of this? You're loving this. So am I. What do you think of this wine?
I think it's incredible how you can taste the fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, you really can.
And so how the fruit flavor gets in there, the same characteristic that makes a melon taste and smell like a melon is also in this grape.
And as you say, I mean, even you that likes red wine, I mean, somehow to me, red wine doesn't, when it's 85 degrees or something.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
The white wine just seems to work much better.
Well,
Especially
let's
when
find out if it's refrigerated, as we're going to learn in a couple of seconds, So before we go ahead for a second, you were supposed to be here a couple of weeks ago. You got caught up in D.C. with that nightmare when the computer shut down all the airlines?
Yep. So I made full use of the Delta Lounge for hours and hours.
How long were you there?
Gosh,
all day.
I was there all day long.
Do they tell you anything, or do they not?
Well, they really couldn't because they went on. I believe they went onto one of their basically like an old computer that had the old system on it, and they were kind of doing things old school style to try to find it. They had one computer for everyone.
So what kind of person are you? Are you the person who's like ready, your head's ready to pop off?
No.
Or are you just relaxed and do
I'm
what
pretty
you
chill.
can?
You know, if they have great Wi-Fi, comfortable seats, and a good bar.
Is that true?
Yeah, very.
It is
no,
really true.
he's
You
a very,
paused there for
no,
a
no,
second.
no, no, no.
I'm a good traveler.
Because I was wondering if it was true that the Delta Lounge in
No,
DC
I meant
is
is it
good,
true that
or-
he was calm and...
No, totally calm. What are you going to do? The whole system, you know...
You rage against the machine. That's what you do. You shorten your life a little bit. Exactly.
But, you know, then you see the people like yelling at the poor Delta
you're
people, and what can they do?
So would you have acted the same way?
I'm a little hotter under the collar.
I had a feeling
than
that might be the
TJ is.
case.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So what's the red wine there, TJ?
So now we're going to go over to one of the most exciting kind of general wine regions in the world, and that's South Africa.
Really?
And yeah, so South Africa, so we're coming right outside of Cape Town in the wine regions, and this is a wine called Kamusha, and it's called the Wild Mutupo from a gentleman named Tanashi. And so this is a grape called Carignan. You usually grow it kind of in that Mediterranean horseshoe, eastern Spain, southern France, but this is grown in this really hot climate. And this is a red wine that is not made with any oak or not aged in any oak. So all of the sensation is really on the mid and the front of your mouth, your palate, as opposed to the back. But when you taste this, actually when you smell it first, it's like crushed raspberries and crushed strawberries and
really
a lot of
nailed
like
this one. This is
minerality.
perfect,
This wine absolutely slams. And what's great about this is that for anyone, all of the listeners that have enjoyed like Beaujolais over the years, this is very Beaujolais in style, right? It's bright, it's fresh, it's high acid driven, unoaked, and goes with a lot of foods. But today we wanted to do like the strawberry. But also if we were down in Martha's Vineyard the other day doing an event, and we had a great dish that would have screamed for this wine right here, which was seafood. I think it was lobster, grilled lobster tail with watermelon and feta. And it was so good, and you needed a wine like this. I had a cocktail.
The key to these wines is really put them in the fridge. Don't worry about it.
How do you
and
decide
drink
what red wine can go in the fridge and what can't?
I like wines that don't have any oak because oak brings another acid in your mouth, tannin, that same thing that's in coffee and tea, and walnuts. And so when it gets cold, it really amplifies that dryness, that astringency. So if it doesn't have that, it's a lot cleaner and brighter and fresher.
I tell you, that is spectacular.
Well,
this
wait
is
till
for
you
your
try it with the
raspberry
strawberry.
iced tea drink.
So now you have strawberry?
Yeah,
Is that what
try
you
the
do?
Yes, now I'll
strawberry.
try a strawberry. Yeah.
Because you're going to really see how they go together. Marjorie's not convinced
We're
about
both
this
eating
one.
strawberries. Keep talking.
Yeah.
TJ.
So this is great. What's great about the South African wine is that there's so much value. The U.S. dollar for a generation has been, 10 to 19 times for the U.S. dollar to the South African rand. So the value of these wines coming out. I mean, this is hand-harvested, hand-grown, organic vineyards. We bought the entire allocation for Massachusetts.
Wow.
So you can only get this at the Urban Grape for $25.
Wow.
But you have that. If this was from France, it'd probably be twice the price.
What's the number?
So-
This is a 4R, so 4 red.
And
we're
you said
blowing your mind,
25 for
So
I know.
20 for the both whites,
Both
the
whites,
Sortico,
okay.
and the Vino Verde, and 25 for this.
Sorry.
Summertime, you're going to drink a little bit faster, a little bit quicker.
Get 2 bottles.
Yeah, you're going to get 2 bottles. You're
Yeah.
gonna have people. But also, if you wanted to chill this wine and put it in a solo cup with an ice cube and grill, it's your wine.
Do it.
That's
Who
what
cares?
summer's about.
Oh, that's something that I would never
Can you
have
just
thought.
say say liquor one time for me? Because usually when we bring like a spirit, I love the way that you say you're not bringing any liquor, are you?
Liquor. Liquor. Well, the stereotype about the Irish. What can I say, TJ? But you mentioned this South African wine being grown in lots of heat. Because I do worry about that with climate change. We will still have wines, they'll just be grown differently and maybe in different places, and it's going to be okay.
It is going to be okay. They are finding new microclimates where they're able to grow grapes, where the vines are okay and dealing with the heat. So they are on the cutting edge of climate change and how they're going to keep their industry alive. One of the bigger problems is kind of the pseudo-health issues and concern around wine. Like, that's almost more of an issue.
What pseudo-health issue?
I think that a lot of people are looking for wine alternatives and things like that, and the media has really jumped on all of this. But anything in moderation is fine.
By the way, Jamie, our lead producer, wrote, Marjorie talks about climate change all the time on the show. Marjorie's finally being honest about her concern about climate change.
It's for the wine.
It's all about the wine.
Will the grapes be okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is such a lovely thing, especially in the summertime when, you're on vacation more, you may be drinking more because you're on vacation. It's such a lovely thing.
Or you're doing a live radio show.
Or you're doing a live radio show, that's right.
in D.C.
Yeah, and it's just sort of, I don't know, I feel very sophisticated drinking a nice glass of wine.
Wine really brings people together, and I think that's what we see, is that you see all ages and, from all over the city enjoying a glass of wine together.
Okay, so the first white wine has a screw top. The other two have corks. What's the deal in 2024? Is there a preference?
Well, for the screw cap, the original name is called Stelvin Closure, and on that, because Dr. Stelvin invented it, so of course you named it after yourself.
Yes, exactly.
With the screw caps, it doesn't give any. There's no relationship between screw cap and quality of the wine that's inside. In some cases, the Stelvin closures are actually more expensive than cork.
Really?
So take that whole, screw cap wines are cheap and so it doesn't matter. But what's nice about this is that if you don't finish the bottle in one sitting, it's easy to put back on, and sometimes it's really hard to get the cork back in a bottle. So screw caps are great, especially if, this time of year.
I think they last.
Going to the beach.
They last longer, it
They do.
seems to me. They really preserve the wine longer, it seems to me anyway.
Well, it doesn't allow oxygen in, and cork is porous. So.
Can I ask you one last thing before you two go? As I said, we knew you when you were two local wonderful souls with this little tiny bit. No, but what is it like? I mean this sincerely. I know you're both fairly modest, which makes this question hard. You went from, a small local operation with a lot of hopes. You're like, you walk into a room, you are it. I mean, as we said before, you've won all these awards. You're number one in the things you talked about. How's that changed your whole deal? Hadley, starting with you.
I think...
Don't be humble. Be honest.
We are humble, though, Jim, and at the end of the day, the only thing that it's changed is made it harder to be home for family dinner, and that's the downside.
Are your kids okay with that?
Yeah, yes, they are, because they're older, and they're 15 and 17 now, and they're so proud of us and very into the growth of the business. But I think that's the hardest part, is juggling the growth of the business and maybe how much people want our time with our family, which is our main priority.
How about the celebrity part? I mean, it is. And again, I know you'll deny this. You
TJ
guys
is
are
a true celebrity.
He is a celebrity in the wine world.
Yes,
What is that like for you? Look at the nervous look on his face.
It's not nervous. I'm just double parked. It's what Hadley said. It's our time. Like, we are just so much busier.
Yeah, that's hard.
Like, I have to go to DC, and we go to California with our wine brand, and I was on Martha's Vineyard doing a big event with a celebrity chef at the Harborview Hotel this weekend for the African American Film Festival, and it's just like a lot of back and forth and bounce around. But it's awesome. It's awesome. We have a massive community of supporters like you all, and after we do your shows, we always get more. We increase our community.
Good.
Can I say one more thing? Also, going into your place, your staff, which I think
are lovely,
are the kindest, most helpful,
Thank you.
and also when you feel you're going to be intimidated, which I am less with the 1 through 10 deal, but I'm still a little intimidated. They are so warm and so welcome. They're really great,
Thank you.
and I assume it's a tribute both to them and you. It's great to see you. By the way, beyond DC, is there a next? By the way.
Oh God, let us get through the PTSD of opening a store in DC, and then we would like to expand.
How's that one do? It's doing great from what I read in the reviews.
It's doing great. But absolutely, we would love to expand. We would like to be all over the country. We need some investors to come find us and help us do that.
Urban Grape for you investors out there.
Congratulations on
Great to see
new
you both.
places.
Thanks.
I felt guilty all the time ever since I had a baby. I've been guilty for like ever. So there you go.
There you go.
Anyway, we've been speaking with
Great to see you
TJ and
both.
Hadley
Thanks so
Douglas of
much.
Urban Grape.
They're great.
And thank you very, very much. They're on Columbus Avenue in the south end of Boston. They're also in Washington, D.C. Tell me again, where in Washington, D.C.?
On 9th and N in Shaw.
On 9th and N and Shaw. Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. Up next, CNN's John King. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, and other political news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.
GBH thanks our sustaining members. Listeners in our community who make easy, recurring contributions of just $10 or $15 a month to support this station. The impact of these gifts can be heard every day on GBH, with in-depth local stories and engaging conversations about what's happening here in Boston and beyond. To learn more about how you can become a sustaining member, visit gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you and Carr Financial Group, independent fiduciaries committed to guiding investors through the changing economy with wealth management, financial, and retirement planning services. Consultations can be scheduled at carrfinancial.com. And Boston Children's Museum, presenting the Summer of Curiosity, where you can play, create, and wonder about the world around you. From Winnie the Pooh to the Outdoor Curiosity Kitchen. Learn more at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Mark Regan broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're now joined by a guy, sadly, he isn't bringing wine, but he brings other things to the table. John King from CNN, their chief national correspondent. He's got these great reporting projects. Last night, All Over the Map was incredible out of Arizona. And the battleground, I believe, John, is somewhere in my home state of Pennsylvania, ahead of the Harris Walls rally, introducing the vice presidential nominee to the public. Hi, John King.
Greetings from Montgomery County, just outside of Philadelphia, and thanks for making me thirsty, but I can promise.
Oh, my goodness.
I promise your last guest I will visit the new D.C. operation as soon as I get home.
Fabulous, fabulous. They're great,
really
and it's great.
A clever, unintimidating way to buy wine. So, John, why did Kamala Harris pick Walz, and was it a good move? Do the political operatives think at this point?
I think it's interesting because you're seeing a lot of the D.C. chattering class somewhat disappointed. I think they had a favorite first in Senator Kelly and then maybe in Governor Shapiro. If the D.C. chattering class thinks it's not the best pick, then it probably is. Look, we'll see how it plays out. And I think the most important thing to say here is you cannot find any data. We talked about this last week, I think, that says voters, make their decision based on the vice presidential pick. However, it can hurt you, and I think that Trump has had a bit of a bumpy rollout with J.D. Vance. Where has J.D. Vance had a problem, right? With his cat lady remarks, suburban women, people who think you don't want politicians to be judgmental. And so what do you get in Tim Walz? You get a small-town guy, Midwesterner, just like J.D. Vance is a small-town guy, except this is a guy who made abortion the law of the land in his state of Minnesota, who has helped kids from low-income families get free or reduced cost meals. And so when the Republicans are going to attack Harris and whoever she picked as liberals, Walz does give them someone who say, if you mean by being a liberal government that works for people who need help or people who want rights. Yeah. So we'll see if they can make the argument. He's a really funny guy. He is beloved by his other governors. Yeah, he served in the National Guard. He's not a lawyer. He's a school teacher. He was a coach. We've talked a lot in my travels about how people are disillusioned with politics and they're looking for something different. I think he gives you the opportunity to say, first woman of color as your president, a different kind of guy from the small town Midwest, the Minneapolis suburbs. It's an interesting pick, and I'm really fascinated to see how it plays out.
By the way, as soon as we have talked to John, we're going to entertain your thoughts about whether or not Kamala Harris made the right choice with Governor Walz. John, I don't remember who you were talking to last night on CNN, but you were talking about having been in Arizona and I think Georgia and now Pennsylvania, whatever, all these battles.
He in Arizona said it's a lot easier to win support for somebody when you can actually see them out campaigning.
Yeah.
So Democrats were now all saying all the things they were biting their tongue about in their nervousness about Biden. There's just no question, whether it's small dollar contributions, the canvassers were saying that, they usually work 30 hours a week. They were all willing to work more hours. They had more people volunteering. There's no question that there is grassroots Democratic energy. It's a Z compared to A or B 3-4 weeks ago, especially after the debate, right after the Biden-Trump debate. Now, is that enough? I would posit it is not. But it makes Harris competitive. And now she has a chance to try to win back some of the young people who left the president, win back some of the independents. And I'm here and was just having a conversation with a suburban Philadelphia woman who's a registered Republican who says if it was Biden-Trump, she might have voted Trump for the first time. She voted for Hillary Clinton, then she voted for Joe Biden. And she said she might have voted Trump because she doesn't like Biden's policies. Now she's going to give Harris a look. That's what Democrats are looking for. She has an opportunity. The question is, can she take advantage of it?
Well, I know we've talked a lot about Pennsylvania being such a crucial state with its 19 electoral votes. That's where Shapiro obviously is from, Wisconsin, Michigan, these states, these must-win states. But you talked about a Sun Belt strategy for Harris. What's that?
Well, if it's, number one, Joe Biden did flip Georgia and Arizona. Why did that happen? Those states are becoming more suburban. And so you have a combination in Georgia. You have a very significant number 2 in the country in terms of the percentage of voters who are African American. So there's your foundational Democratic base. And then as the Atlanta suburbs, just like the Philadelphia suburbs, where Jim's from, have become more Democratic, higher college education is now more Democratic. Abortion rights in the suburbs play as well. So those states, Georgia and Arizona, have become more Democratic. Now, they're still quite purple. The Sun Belt strategy, Kamala Harris could be president even if she lost the 3 blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those 3 have voted together since 2004, by the way.
Wow.
They have a split. But she would also have to win North Carolina to do that, which, remember, Obama won North Carolina in 2008 because of historic African-American turnout. But then even Obama lost it in 2012 when that turnout dropped back just a little bit. Democrats have thought for since 2008, that they can get North Carolina because of the demographic changes. A big African-American vote, plus all the research triangle, all the colleges, the campuses, and the health care and the technology, that it should be good for them, but they always come up just short. So it is possible. The safest Democratic strategy is when Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then you really only need one more. You can just get Nebraska's 2nd congressional district and get to 270, or pick up one of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, or North Carolina. That would get Harris in there. But with her, the one point is, if Biden were to top the ticket, his only path was the 3 blue wall states, and then hold your breath and hope you get Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. Harris at least does have a couple of options. I would argue Trump probably still has more options, but she has narrowed that gap actually quite a bit. And I would say that question's almost irrelevant until we get through the Democratic convention and up to Labor Day, and then we'll have a sense of where we are. But she has made it more competitive, without a doubt.
You go ahead, Mark.
The conventional wisdom is that vice presidents' candidates to get back to Walz don't matter that much. Sarah Palin may have hurt John McCain back in 2008, but I can see where, if you're freaked out by a woman, if you're freaked out by a woman of color, you might be reassured by the football coach, school teacher, National Guard kind of guy.
Why? He's not in charge.
Because it's a combination. It's a combination of people together. I don't know. I can see where, he doesn't look like a politician. Shapiro looks more like a politician. Kelly doesn't look like a politician either. He's an astronaut, obviously, out in Arizona. There must have been something. I wondered if there was something wrong there that they found out, because he was eliminated, and I thought he'd be great too. But you know what I mean? It's a yin and yang kind of thing with Harris and Walz, at least to me. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you, and I think part of the test here, Walz is to Harris as Biden was to Obama.
Yes, exactly.
A blue-collar guy who, it gives you validation. Do you vote for Kamala Harris because of Tim Walz? No. But if you had a question, does Barack Obama understand me, or is he going to have somebody in the room who understands me? That was why you picked Joe Biden. So the people of Scranton, Pennsylvania said, okay, I'm represented in the room. Maybe I don't know this guy Obama. Maybe I've never voted for a black guy for anything before, and so it's a little hard. It's a little different. But I agree with his values, and okay, look what he did. Okay, my guy, one of us is going to be in the room. I think that is the potential. That's the potential for Walz.
We're talking to John King from CNN, who's in Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, ahead of the Harris-Walz first public appearance later today. John, you're always careful to say whenever we talk about polls that it's a moment in time. But for these last, whatever I think you said, 16 days, it has been trending in one direction. And I have to say, while I'm not quite a student of Trump, I'm somebody who, like Marjorie and you, obviously, who followed him closely for the last X number of years, maybe 9 years. I've never seen him so unequipped to fight as he appears to be now. She's got a low IQ. She's dumb. She didn't say she was black until it's all flailing kind of stuff that seems to be in search of a game plan. Am I being unfair to Trump here?
You sound like the serious adults on his campaign staff, because that's exactly what they're telling him.
Are they?
Yes, they're telling him, campaign on inflation, campaign on leadership, campaign on, the pre-COVID Trump economy. and try to get people back on that point, or campaign on the border and immigration. Stop insulting her. Stop making it personal. But we know, whether we want to talk about Hillary Clinton in 2016 or Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker during the Trump presidency, Trump has a problem dealing with strong women. He just does. The facts support that. So he mispronounces her name. Yesterday in a Truth Social posting, he misspelled her name. And when you add that into J.D. Vance and the childless cat lady thing, when suburban women have the potential to change this election, and now you have Harris, who's very strong on reproductive rights, Tim Walz, who made reproductive rights the law of the land in his state of Minnesota. So you have a woman of color and a governor who has supported issues that are important to a lot. Not everyone agrees on that issue, but to a significant number of moderate suburban, Nikki Haley voters or people who voted for George W. Bush and Mitt Romney and John McCain, but don't like Donald Trump. And then you're on top of that, she's where you are on policy, and then he's being a jerk. Forgive me, but that's what some of the voters say. He's being a jerk. That's not wise. The question is, can they get him back?
John King, the other thing people have, the conventional wisdom seems to be that it's very difficult to pick a vice president in such a short amount of time because there's not enough time for vetting, et cetera. Obviously, Trump had a lot more time to pick J.D. Vance. So do you think that they just missed some of the stuff about Vance, or that when they picked him when Biden was still in the race and the thinking was that Trump was going to win? It seems to me to pick someone that says that people with children should have more power in their vote than people who don't have children, and you say you're opposed to no-fault divorce and think that maybe you're better off staying in Papa and Mama's marriage that was violent, and she set him on fire at one point and all these crazy things. Did they not know that, or did they think it didn't matter?
That's a great question, and I can't answer whether did they see all of those clips. But those clips, there's this little thing called the internet.
Yes.
And there's a search bar. There's a search bar at the top, and you type in a few words, and this is not hard to find. This is not like this is not like it's hidden in something somebody wrote in their senior year of high school before the internet, and you have to go back and find the microfiche, and go through the files to get it. This is all over the internet. And I would also say that there are a lot of people in the MAGA movement who believe this, believe it. And now you have J.D. Vance's wife, who did one interview trying to say what he means is that, government needs to do more to support parents. Well, that's very different than saying somebody who doesn't have children is inferior as a voter, is inferior as a citizen. His tone is very different than Usha Vance tried to describe it. We'll see if they can clean this up. But he didn't just say it once. He said it repeatedly. And he said variations of it repeatedly. So you have to assume that they knew it, Marjorie. You have to assume that they thought it's okay. And remember, when he made the Vance pick, Donald Trump was in the driver's seat.
Right.
And again, I think they think that he was thinking maybe of somebody who could help him in small town America as a potential heir to the MAGA movement. That his son and some other people around him really pushed strongly. A lot of people pushed him away from J.D. Vance. A lot of Republicans tried to get him to go somewhere else, but he didn't. But Donald Trump was in the driver's seat then. And I think one of the lessons here for any decision you make in life, if you are on a win streak, don't make the decision thinking you're always going to be on a win streak. Make a decision, always treat yourself, even if you're ahead 40-0 in the game, always think it's 0-0 or think you're behind.
John, one of the other interesting things from your Arizona piece last night, to me at least, was you talked to two people, an older guy and a young guy. I think the young guy might be voting for the first time. I can't remember. Neither of whom are going to vote for the Republican or the Democrat. I think the older guy said, I'm going to vote for a libertarian. And I think the younger guy said a socialist. I'm not clear. The basic thesis being, I think, the tiredest line in the history of politics. There's no difference between the parties and the candidates. How aberrational are they in your travels? Are there still people in significant numbers who are saying they're all the same?
There are, let me separate them. Nico Rios is the 19-year-old. He says if he was old enough in 2020, he would have voted for Biden, that he supported Biden on issues like climate, on issues like abortion rights, on LGBTQ rights and things like that. He says now he sees no difference in the parties, but he's especially mad. He doesn't like Biden's immigration policies. He doesn't see a big distinction with Trump, but he's especially mad over Israel-Hamas. Yeah. And he has been part of some pro-Palestinian protests. He says he's gone, although he does say, Jim, that a lot of his friends who were not going to vote for Biden are now talking about, should we give Kamala a look? So she's not going to get, doesn't sound like she's going to get Nico, but she may get some of her friends, and she needs a lot of his friends. Ray Flores is the restaurant owner. He's a little different in that he says as of today he would vote third party, and that's what he told me when we first met back in March. But he does say that he believes Harris deserves a look, that you have a new, he said, he called it a fresh new game. And because of that, he wants to give her a look. He's very distrustful of Washington and the political class. He thinks politicians of both parties just say what it takes to win, and they talk, but they don't follow through on their promises. But he did say he would give her a look, and that's what I would say is the opportunity, right? In a place like Arizona, 10,000 votes, you have to get those true independents. You got to get as many of them as you can, and Ray is a true independent. A lot of people who say they're independents, tend to vote 80 or 90% for one party or the other. They just don't like being labeled as a partisan, so they say they're independents. Ray is a true independent, but he did say he would give her a look, and he said he wants a debate. And so again, there's the opportunity to pick up that vote. I think Nico is a 19-year-old, and the Hamas-Israel thing has become a cause for him. I don't see any chance he can come back, but we're going to go back and follow up with him just to test that, number one, but also to see, if he has 10 friends who are where he is today, and Harris can get 6 or 7 of them back, that's what she needs to do. Start to grow her numbers. The change has made her competitive. Now she has to grow some more to put all of those battleground states in play to widen the map.
Last thing from me, are you, if you were a betting person, would you say there'll be a debate? Obviously, as of the moment, Kamala Harris says she's showing up by herself to ABC, and Donald Trump allegedly has a deal, even though it's not clear to me he does, worked out with Fox News. Will there be a debate?
I don't know the answer to that, so here's what I would say. Is it looks like right now Donald Trump doesn't want a debate, because he has one on the table and he walked away from it. Yes, he's saying, I want to do it on Fox instead, but there was one on the table that he could do and he walked away from it. So you just mentioned the trajectory in the polling. If Harris can continue the trajectory, and now she's pulled herself into even or just behind Trump, with the momentum, the arrow is clearly pointing her way. If when we talk next week and after the Democratic convention, does Donald Trump think he needs one? That would get him back to the table.
Fair enough. Hey, John, it's wonderful to talk to you. The reporting is brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Good to talk to you. We have been speaking with CNN's John King, and we much appreciate his time. He joins us every Tuesday.
You know what, by the way, when he speaks to people, admittedly, it's not like polling,
it's great.
not scientific.
It's great.
You really get such a better sense of what real people of all political stripes are thinking about in their life. It's really hugely insightful stuff.
And when people say things like the two parties, there's no differences, I think, wow.
Something's wrong with this picture. Yeah.
Something's wrong. Anyway, up next, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on Kamala Harris's pick for Vice President, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Our number is 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Jermaine Jenkins has been fighting to bring healthy food to her community for years. She's done it by turning a vacant city lot into a thriving urban farm. Her fight for food justice is the focus of the new documentary, Rooted. She joins us ahead of her event at Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. Then New York Times bestselling author J. Courtney Sullivan on her new novel. That's on The Culture Show, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And the MBTA Commuter Rail, providing public transportation service to over 170 cities and towns in Massachusetts. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thursday morning, I think at 11, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, will join us. One phrase may have launched Tim Walz's political career on the national stage.
That is weird behavior.
Exactly. The progressive Minnesota governor has just been named as Kamala Harris's pick for VP, made headlines last month by calling Republicans like Trump and Vance and others weird for their behavior, and it caught on big time. So the lines are open, 877-301-8970. One, what do you think of Walz? Was he your choice? And by the way, you don't have to be a Democrat or an independent who leans Democratic. Any political stripe is welcome. Does the running mate matter at all when you make a decision come November if you vote by mail before? Trump would say no, but the Democrats are wagering that Walz can bring the Midwest working class voting bloc to the ticket, even as he's potentially the most progressive option. Enshrined abortion rights, as John said, I think in the state constitution, banned conversion therapy, provided protections for gender-affirming health care. What do you make of the pick? Is it a no harm done kind of thing, or can you see it actually helping? You know, Marjorie, John said that Donald Trump has I think his words were a problem with strong women.
Yes.
My favorite Tim Walz quote was this. There was that White Dudes for Harris fundraising Zoom call. David Hogg was on it. David was with us a couple of days ago, and some others. Here is what Walz had to say that I thought was pretty great.
How often in 100 days do you get to change the trajectory of the world? How often in 100 days do you get to do something that's going to impact generations to come? And how often in the world do you make that bastard wake up afterwards and know that a black woman kicked his ass and sent him on the road? And you know that's something that guy's going to have to live with for the rest of his life.
877-301-8097. I don't know if he's going to talk like that now that he's the nominee, but I think he nailed it. I mean, Trump not only has a problem with women, he has a real problem with black women. All the women prosecutors, Letitia James, they're all racist, as we well know. And now he is in a race with a black woman for the presidency of the United States.
And here are some of the things that he has done out there in Minnesota. Universal free school meals for kids, protecting reproductive freedom, we talked about that before, strengthening voting rights, laying the groundwork to get Minnesota to 100% clean electricity by 2040, cutting taxes for the middle class, expanding paid leave for Minnesota workers. He's on board with some gun restrictions. He's a moderate on gun stuff, but he's for the red flag laws where you can take guns away from people
like we have here
that are deemed by a judge to have mental health issues. And he's expanded recreational marijuana. He's also, by the way, for background checks on guns as well. So there you go.
But as far as we know, he has never had a dead bear in his backseat. 877-301-8970. By the way, I've heard of Walz before. You were mentioning he's new to you. I'd never heard him speak before, and he can talk. I just don't know. I was thinking, you and I were talking before the show this morning, how much does that matter? I mean, what are there'll be a debate. There's a vice presidential debate. Jamie, can you look up when that is, if you don't mind? I think it's October, but I'm not sure. There's one vice presidential debate, Vance versus Walz, that will happen. We don't know, as we just said, that whether there'll be another presidential debate, which would be really sad if there was not, at least in my estimation. But he can really talk, and I just don't know, except in rallies where an infinitesimally small percentage of the public goes. They're usually the strongest supporters for a candidate to begin with. I don't know how much it matters. We'll see.
I think he's got more of a sense of humor than J.D. Vance.
Well, that's actually pretty important,
I don't see J.D. Vance being a funny guy. Do you?
Did you see his wife's interview with Fox News?
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously they said she's really smart. Having said that, they sent her in with the notion you're supposed to use the word quip. And did you hear this? She forgot and said it was just a quote. A quip. And then she said quip repeatedly, trying to explain away this childless cat lady thing. And after you listen to her, you should watch the clip again. And I think you'll have a hard time believing her breakdown of what her husband did. Fran and Methuen, you're first as we discuss the selection of Tim Walz as the VP nominee. Hey, Fran.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I am elated. As a matter of fact, I went to Facebook and I gave the campaign a new slogan. It's called MAXA. Make America smile again. I am totally tired of the doom and gloom and the venom that's coming from Trump and Vance. And I am so happy she picked Tim Walz. I knew he was the guy she was going to pick. I loved the way he spoke when I heard him a few weeks back. Kudos for Kamala. I am totally in. And I'm a baby boomer, by the way.
Hey, we were losing you, but thank you. Your elation comes through, not just in your words, but the feel of your call. We're glad you're happy. Thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it.
Here's a texter who's got immediate family or a family in Minnesota who says they describe Tim Walz as the most normal and down-to-earth person in the state, like your favorite uncle. And he was, a teacher, as we said before, coached the high school football team, faculty advisor for the school's first Gay-Straight Alliance chapter in 1999, which was long before many people around the country even supported gay rights. Paul in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So just following up, I was thrilled with the pick. And the point that I liked is the nominee made was Donald Trump doesn't laugh. I've never seen the man laugh. I've never seen him with a genuine smile on his face. And that just kind of wraps up with being weird. And I think this guy's a teacher coach. He's a good judge of character. I think he meshes very well with Kamala. I think you have to have someone of a like mind, and I think Kamala realizes that, being so close to the presidency for the past 4 years. That's about it.
Paul, thanks for the call. We've said this before, but the first person to ever make that observation, to my knowledge, was on our show when about 7 or 8 years ago, Chuck Todd, then host of Meet the Press, said he spent the whole weekend watching YouTube clips of Donald Trump, and the only one time that he ever saw Trump laugh was when he was deriding somebody else, so his laughter was at the expense of the person he was ridiculing. And for people who are saying, when they heard Paul or Chuck, think that's not, who cares? Think about it for a minute. What does that say about a human being who really never lets his or her guard down and is able to laugh and have fun, particularly at him or herself? And I think there's an issue there,
Well, yeah, I think that there's a big issue with him. Absolutely.
By the way, and if I recall correctly, I think Chuck said the person who was the butt of the joke that he did laugh at, you know who it was? Melania Trump. And I believe it was one of those dinners, the Al Smith dinners that were both presidential candidates show up in New York.
Well, one of the worst things he did when he made fun of the guy that was disabled, the New York Times reporter, and he did these spastic
mocking
things.
His movements. Yeah.
It was absolutely.
That was one of the many days when I said that's the end of the Trump campaign in 2016. I was wrong about that, wrong about John McCain, wrong about grabbing him by the you-know-what.
Yep.
But it's 2024.
Mary Ellen and Worcester, what do you think, Mary Ellen?
Hey, Mary Ellen.
Absolutely terrific choice.
Why?
I was working on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee for 6 years when Tim Walz was a lead on the House Committee. One of the things that I think is terrific is that to put somebody who has House experience with a president who has Senate experience, I think the functioning between the House and the Senate has a lot of potential to work out really well, given what I experienced over the 6 years that he was very active on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and I was working on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee.
That's actually great to hear. Mary Ellen, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
A lot of the texters think that the problem with Kelly is he's a senator, and that would have opened up the seat out there, and they would have lost possibly a Democrat in the Senate in Arizona.
Well, wouldn't the Democratic governor pick the replacement for Kelly? I assume.
I would think so.
And that's Katie Hobbs. By the way, one of the interesting things is, while they say Walz is a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, did you read who put out a statement saying how great he was?
Yeah, Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin. My friend Governor Tim Walz will bring normality back to the most chaotic political environment that most of us have ever seen. All the candidates were strong, etc., but I can think of no one better than Walz to help bring our country closer together. He's the real deal. I look forward, etc. Now, that's really interesting, since he is obviously the conservative wing of the Democratic Party. And by the way, the reason why I thought that Kelly was the natural, not just because he was a veteran, because obviously Walz is too, and not just because he was an astronaut, which I think, as John King said just last week, is pretty appealing if you're going to a rally. It's that he's a moderate and pretty tough on immigration.
Yeah.
Which one might argue is her greatest vulnerability. And I know we've had this discussion. We had it with, who do we have it with? Charlie Sennett last week. She was not in charge of the border, but she was in charge of a piece of the action. And obviously things are not great, and you can blame it on Trump and the Republican sycophants in Congress, but nevertheless, there's deep concern about immigration, even in states, in states like Massachusetts as well. And I thought what I would have done if I were Harris is said the day I picked him, he will be my point person on immigration, sending a message. Having said that, she's got really smart advisors. She's really smart. So I assume there's a lot to Walz, including one of the stories I think I read in the New York Times is the chemistry deal, because I think most observers said she never really got along that well with Joe Biden and vice versa, that she really hit it off with this guy, which I guess does matter when you're in a tense campaign and if you are lucky enough to be able to govern.
Here's Laura from West Roxbury. I just bought a Harris Walz bumper sticker. VPs don't matter a ton as far as people getting to vote for them, but I think I might love Walz. I'm a true Democrat. With Biden, I was like, meh, Harris, yeah, let's go. And a teacher in the White House, yes, please.
You know, by the way, for those who were arguing, I read a couple of pieces in the last 24 hours about whether or not a vice presidential candidate ever helped win electoral votes, not hurt, a la Palin and potentially Vance. And the only one in semi-recent history is LBJ when running with Kennedy. But there's we should ask Doris Kearns Goodwin next time she's here, there's a much greater debate on both sides about whether or not he really was the leader of the Southern strategy without whom Kennedy couldn't have been elected, or whether he was critical. I always thought that LBJ was seen as the key there, but there are a lot of historians who don't buy that. So,
Robert and Lowell, thank you for calling.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
First of all, I don't know, I know you guys are both political junkies, but I want to start with, I wish that Kamala would stop trying to taunt Donald Trump into another debate. Do you remember the last time that backfired, when a female candidate kept taunting someone into a debate and it backfired?
I assume you're talking about Hillary Clinton. Is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about Shannon O'Brien. She had a huge lead for the governorship.
Oh, with Mitt Romney?
Yeah, and it did not. So anyway.
By the way, Robert, with all due respect, by the way, I thought Shannon was a really good candidate, and I think the notion that she lost momentum because of her joke about a tattoo, which to me shows the immaturity of the voters, but nevertheless, I think she is wise to challenge Trump, one, to demonstrate how fearful he is about going up against her, and secondly, the best I've ever seen, Marjorie's mentioned this repeatedly, the best I've ever seen Kamala Harris is when she's been a Senate at a hearing, when she has eviscerated people like former Attorney General Barr and others. So
Kavanaugh, she did a number on Kavanaugh.
I would love to see her debate a guy who doesn't have nearly, as he called her low IQ. I would say he's IQ challenged when it comes to this woman, but go ahead.
One debate will suffice. But anyway, to Governor Walz, I really have grown to like him very much. I've seen a couple of his videos, the one with him and his daughter when they go to the amusement park.
Yeah.
They humanizes him so much. Also, you can call him progressive, you can call him whatever you want, but he's the governor that gets things done in his
Great point.
state. He's got his state in good working order. He's the kind of governor I hope Maura Healey gets to be regarded that way. I think she could, but Governor Walz, he's really good. The other governor that I liked in this race was Beshear in Kentucky.
That was Marjorie's guy.
Experience.
Yep.
Very impressive. Very impressive. So I like his choice. I think he's a great communicator.
You make a great case, Robert. Thank you very much for your perspective. We appreciate it.
Here's Joel in Connecticut. Choosing a Ted Lasso type for your VP is not that bad of an idea. And here's Willow in Cambridge. I'm a trans woman, moved to Massachusetts from Minnesota, took a job offer here. When moving to Minnesota, the extremely trans and LGBTQ-friendly policies of the state were a huge draw. I'm happy that Walz's pragmatic and folksy nature will be more widely known. Rama in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey there.
Hello, yes. Because politics should be fun, right?
Well,
this guy's gonna make it fun.
Well, by the way, just stop there. I meant to comment on that other guy who said that. The fact that this guy is able to make a joke, or at least be lighthearted, I happen to find really appealing in these sort of, everything is horrible times. So I'm with you if that's your point there, Roma. Go ahead.
Yeah, and not knowing much about Kelly or this Governor Walz, I've heard him a few times on the various NPR channels, and he sounds like he's speaking English. And I don't mean that like foreign language.
No,
I
we
mean
understand.
that he's
We got it.
not politics. And as you know, when I send text and call in, I'm always asking the governor or the mayor to actually answer the questions and speak English, like Diana DeZoglia does. Okay, this guy sounds like he's willing to be real and answer the questions. I think he is going to kick ass, and I am so looking forward to the show, and it's going to make it real fun and real interesting, I think.
Thanks for your call. We appreciate it. Glad you're happy. 877-301-8970.
What texter is saying, the Kamala, unlike when we had the Romney-Shannon O'Brien debate, Kamala does not have a tattoo, and she would beat Trump badly in a debate, says this texter. I don't know, I'm not sure she doesn't have a tattoo, but I don't know that she has a tattoo.
As far as we know,
so
can I
there
ask
we
you,
go.
I don't think you were here when, I think it was Andrea and I had this discussion last week. If you were here, my apologies. Does Trump calling her by her, mispronouncing her name, drive you as nuts as it drives me? It is so incredibly disrespectful.
Well, he's doing it on purpose.
Of course, that's
obviously.
exactly my point.
I mean, I don't know how anybody can support Donald Trump. It's just beyond me. But that's,
did you see the story?
That's one of the least offensive things he does compared to everything else he does. It's so offensive.
Well, maybe this is not at the top of offense. I don't know if you read the stories. We didn't get to them today in a lot of outlets about his latest obsession with Harris.
Crowds.
Is her crowds are bigger than his crowds. And he has to say it's because she has entertainers. I don't need entertainers at my debate.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it harkens back to the infamous Sean Spicer had to go lie about the
day,
inauguration
and the
on day one.
pictures of the crowds
Exactly.
in Washington, and Spicer's out there trying to say, looking at the pictures saying, there's no comparison between the Obama crowds and Trump's crowds. That's what he obsessed over. He still obsesses over that. That's one of the things he loves is all the rallies.
One of our colleagues sent us a note. You weren't here. Were you here when Anand Girdadas was
Yes,
with us
I
last
was.
week? And he had written this wonderful piece saying when you do it intentionally for that kind of negative effect, it's not mispronunciation.
Yeah,
it's dispronunciation, which I think is a wonderful term that captures it perfectly.
We have time for one more. Kevin in Wakefield, thank you for calling.
Hello, Kevin.
Hi, I'm actually in Lakeville, not Wakeville.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. I, for one, am loving the fact that her choice was a former non-commissioned officer in the National Guard.
Yeah.
I served for 12 years in the Air Force National Guard. To be a non-commissioned officer, you have to serve with an organization, but you have to have a lot of charisma to get things done. And I think that he wouldn't have progressed or served so effectively had he not been able to understanding that. I'm so proud of the fact that we have a non-com that could be in a position of authority in this country.
Glad you called.
Hey,
Kevin, thank
that
you.
was a great point. Thank you.
Really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
You see the photograph our colleague sent. We mentioned Sean Spicer,
dancing.
the first press secretary for President Trump.
Dancing
on
with the
Dancing with the
Stars.
Stars. It is great. You got to give him. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, though, doesn't it? Can you imagine?
The poor guy. I mean, I don't think he had any idea what he was getting himself into when he
do you
became
think? How great was? Who was the one who imitated him on Saturday Night Live? Melissa McCarthy. Thank you, Aiden. That was one of the most brilliant
When
imitations.
she's driving the Segway around, running over the reporters.
What with the podium? When it's a moving podium around
it's
the
like,
thing.
Yeah, it was a Segway
Great.
instead of a podium. That was a great show. Anyway, thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who called or texted. Sorry I couldn't get to them all. And everybody who came down here to see the show at the
Thank you
Boston
for
Public
coming,
Library.
everybody. Yep.
You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we'll be back here live at the Boston Public Library with GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. We're going to be talking with the family of his 2 Israeli hostages who are still being held by Hamas. Senate candidate Ian Kane, running to unseat Elizabeth Warren, is going to join us. Sky and Telescope's Kelly Beatty and Ralph Clark, CEO of ShotSpotter and former NYC Police Commissioner, and also Police Commissioner in Boston, Bill Bratton, on the heels of a surveillance report conducted by the City of Boston about the effectiveness of ShotSpotter. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, additional support from Ariana Gonzalez. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, Sandra Lopez Burke, and Amanda Francis, and thanks to our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen is